And I think that's true of our country, too. Now, I may not be the loudest person up here, but I think we've already got that in the White House. Houston, we have a problem. We have a guy there that is literally running our country like a game show. He would rather lie than lead. I think we need something different. I am someone that tells the truth. I don't make promises that I can't keep. I have people's back, and I believe that to win, you bring people with you, and that is how you govern as well. Game show. He would rather lie than lead. I think we need something different. I am someone that tells the truth. I don't make promises that I can't keep. I have people's back, and I believe that to win, you bring people with you, and that is how you govern as well. So you're going to hear a lot of ideas up here. Some will be great, but if you see that some of them seem a little off track, I've got a better way. If you feel stuck in the middle of the extremes in our politics and you are tired of the noise and the nonsense, you've got a home with me. Because I don't want to be the president for half of America. I want to be the president for all of America.
Congressman Beto O'Rourke.
It's an honor to be on this debate stage. It is wonderful to be back in Texas, in Houston, back here at TSU. On August 3rd, in El Paso, Texas, two things became crystal clear for me, and I think produced a turning point for this country. The first is just how dangerous Donald Trump is, the cost and the consequence of his presidency. A racism and violence that had long been a part of America was welcomed out into the open and directed to my hometown of El Paso, Texas, where 22 people were killed, dozens more grievously injured by a man carrying a weapon he should never have been able to buy in the first place, inspired to kill by our president. The second is how insufficient our politics is to meet the threat that we have right now. The bitterness, the pettiness, the smallness of the moment, the incentives to attack one another and try to make differences without distinctions, mountains out of molehills. We have to be bigger. We have to see clearly. We have to speak honestly, and we have to act decisively. That's what I want to do for you as President of the United States. Thank you.
Senator Cory Booker.
It was over 20 years ago that I was a law student and moved to inner city Newark, New Jersey to serve as a tenants' rights lawyer to try to address the challenges in my community. And I was sobered by them, the gun violence, the substandard housing. But it was my greatest mentor, a woman named Miss Virginia Jones, who challenged me. She said, boy, if all you see in this neighborhood is problems, that's all there's ever going to be. But if you're stubborn and defiant and can put forth a vision that can unify people, then we can make transformative change. She was a church woman that said, without vision, the people will perish. Well, that's exactly what we did. We created extraordinary unity in our community, and we did things that other people thought was impossible. That's the story of America. At our best, we unify. We find common cause and common purpose. The differences amongst us Democrats on the stage are not as great as the urgency for us to unite as a party, not just to beat Donald Trump, but to unite America in common cause and common purpose. That's why I'm running for president, and that's how I will lead this nation.
Entrepreneur Andrew Yang.
In America today, everything revolves around the almighty dollar. Our schools, our hospitals, our media, even our government. It's why we don't trust our institutions anymore. We have to get our country working for us again instead of the other way around. We have to see ourselves as the owners and shareholders of this democracy rather than inputs into a giant machine. When you donate money to a presidential campaign, what happens? The politician spends the money on TV ads and consultants, and you hope it works out. It's time to trust ourselves more than our politicians. That's why I'm going to do something unprecedented tonight. My campaign will now give a freedom dividend of $1,000 a month for an entire year to 10 American families, someone watching this at home right now. If you believe that you can solve your own problems better than any politician, go to yang2020.com and tell us how $1,000 a month will help you do just that. This is how we will get our country working for us again, the American people.
Mayor Pete Buttigieg.
It's original, I'll give you that. The American people are divided and doubtful at the very moment we need to rise to some of the greatest challenges we've ever seen. As a mayor of an industrial city coming back from the brink, as a veteran of the war in Afghanistan, I know what's at stake in our national leadership. We keep sending politicians to Washington, asking them to fight for us, but then when they get there, they seem more interested in the part about fighting than the part about us. Good politics is supposed to be not about the day-to-day fights of the politicians, but about the day-to-day lives of Americans. We just marked the anniversary of 9/11. All day today, I've been thinking about September 12th, the way it felt when for a moment we came together as a country. Imagine if we had been able to sustain that unity. Imagine what would be possible right now with ideas that are bold enough to meet the challenges of our time, but big enough as well that they could unify the American people. That's what presidential leadership can do. That's what the presidency is for, and that is why I'm asking for your vote.
Senator Kamala Harris.
Thank you. It's great to be back at TSU. So I plan on spending tonight talking with you about my plans to address the problems that keep you up at night. But first, I have a few words for Donald Trump, who we all know is watching. So President Trump, you've spent the last 2.5 years full-time trying to sow hate and division among us, and that is why we've got nothing done. You have used hate, intimidation, fear, and over 12,000 lies as a way to distract from your failed policies and your broken promises. The only reason you've not been indicted is because there was a memo in the Department of Justice that says a sitting president cannot be charged with a crime. But here's what you don't get. What you don't get is that the American people are so much better than this. And we know that the vast majority of us have so much more in common than what separates us, regardless of our race, where we live, or the party with which we're registered to vote. And I plan on focusing on our common issues, our common hopes and desires, and in that way unifying our country, winning this election, and turning the page for America. And now, President Trump, you can go back to watching Fox News.
Senator Bernie Sanders. Senator Sanders.
Let me be blunt and tell you what you don't hear much about in Congress or in the media. And that is, it goes without saying that we must and will defeat Trump, the most dangerous president in the history of this country. But we must do more. We must do more. We have got to recognize that this country is moving into an oligarchic form of society where a handful of billionaires control the economic and political life of this country. And as president, I am prepared to take them on. Yes, we will raise the minimum wage to a living wage. Yes, we will finally make sure that every American has health care as a human right, not a privilege. And yes, we will address the catastrophic crisis of climate change and transform our energy system away from fossil fuel.
Senator Elizabeth Warren.
So I was born and raised in Oklahoma, but I'm sure glad to be in Texas tonight. All 3 of my brothers served on military bases here in Texas. That was their ticket to the middle class. Me, I got my big opportunity about a half a mile down the road from here at the University of Houston, back when it cost $50 a semester. For a price that I could pay for on a part-time waitressing job, I got to finish my 4-year degree and I became a special needs teacher. And after law school, my first big job was back here in Houston. By then, I had 2 little kids, and when childcare nearly brought me down, my Aunt Bee moved in and saved us all. The paths to America's middle class have gotten a lot smaller and a lot narrower. Today, service members are preyed upon by predatory lenders. Students are crushed by debt, and families cannot afford childcare. I know what's broken, I know how to fix it, and I'm going to lead the fight to get it done.
Vice President Joe Biden.
You know, when President Kennedy announced the moonshot, he used a phrase that sticks with me my whole life. He said, "We're doing it because we refuse to postpone." Well, I refuse to postpone 1 more minute spending billions of dollars on curing cancer, Alzheimer's, and other diseases, which if we invest in them, we can find cures. I refuse to postpone giving every single child in America, no matter their zip code, pre-K all the way through high school and beyond. I refuse to postpone any longer taking on climate change and leading the world in taking on climate change. Look, this is the United States of America. There's never been a single solitary time when we've set our mind to something we've been unable to do it. We're walking around with our heads down like, woe is me. We're the best equipped nation in the world to take this on. It's no longer time to postpone. We should get moving. There's enormous, enormous opportunities once we get rid of Donald Trump.
Candidates, thank you. Several of you said you are more united than divided, and that is certainly true. All of you agree on one big thing: the goal of defeating President Trump, driving the country in a new direction. But out on the campaign trail, you have outlined big differences over how far to go and how fast to go. And Vice President Biden, the differences between you and the senators on either side of you tonight strike at the heart of this primary debate. Both Senators Warren and Sanders want to replace Obamacare with Medicare for all. You want to build on Obamacare, not scrap it. They propose spending far more than you to combat climate change and tackle student loan debt, and they would raise more in taxes than you to pay for their programs. Are Senators Warren and Sanders pushing too far, beyond where Democrats want to go and where the country needs to go?
That'll be for the voters to decide that question. Let me tell you what I think. I think we should have a debate on health care. I know that the senator says she's for Bernie. Well, I'm for Barack. I think the Obamacare worked. I think the way in which we add to it, replace everything that's been cut, add a public option, guarantee that everyone will be able to have affordable insurance, number one. Number two, I think we should be in a position of taking a look at what costs are. My plan for health care costs a lot of money. It costs $740 billion. It doesn't cost $30 trillion. $3.4 trillion a year, it turns out, is twice what the entire federal budget is. That's before it exists now, without interest on the debt. How are we going to pay for it? I want to hear tonight how that's happened. So as far, my distinguished friend, the senator on my left, has not indicated how she pays for it. And the senator has, in fact, come forward and said how he's going to pay for it, but it gets him about halfway there. There's a lot of other things that need to be done. I have a bold plan to deal with making sure we triple the money for at-risk schools that are Title I schools from 15 to $45 billion a year. But I go down the line, and each of the things we're talking about, I lay out how I can pay for it, how I can get it done, and why it's better.
Senator Warren, let me take that to you, particularly on what Senator Biden was saying there about health care. He's actually praised Bernie Sanders for being candid about his health care plan. That Senator says that Senator Sanders has been candid about the fact that middle-class taxes are going to go up and most of private insurance is going to be eliminated. Will you make that same admission?
So let's be clear about health care, and let's actually start where Vice President did. We all owe a huge debt to President Obama, who fundamentally transformed health care in America and committed this country to health care for every human being. And now the question is, how best can we improve on it? And I believe the best way we can do that is we make sure that everybody gets covered by health care at the lowest possible cost. How do we pay for it? We pay for it. Those at the very top, the richest individuals and the biggest corporations, are going to pay more. And middle-class families are going to pay less. That's how this is going to work.
Direct question. You said middle-class families are going to pay less, but will middle-class taxes go up to pay for the program? I know you believe that the deductibles and the premiums will go down. Will middle-class taxes go up? Will private insurance be eliminated?
Look, what families have to deal with is cost. Total cost. That's what they have to deal with. And understand, families are paying for their health care today. Families pay every time an insurance company says, sorry, you can't see that specialist. Every time an insurance company says, sorry, that doctor is out of network. Sorry, we are not covering that prescription. Families are paying every time they don't get a prescription filled because they can't pay for it. They don't have a lump checked out because they can't afford the copay. What we're talking about here is what's going to happen in families' pockets, what's going to happen in their budgets. And the answer is on Medicare for All. Costs are going to go up for wealthier individuals, and costs are going to go up for giant corporations. But for hardworking families across this country, costs are going to go down, and that's how it should work under Medicare for All in our health care system.
Senator Sanders, you were invoked by the Vice President. Also take on that question about taxes.
Joe said that Medicare for All will cost over $30 trillion. That's right, Joe. Status quo over 10 years will be $50 trillion. Every study done shows that Medicare for All is the most cost-effective approach to providing health care to every man, woman, and child in this country. I, who wrote the damn bill, if I may say so, intend to eliminate all out-of-pocket expenses, all deductibles, all co-payments. Nobody in America will pay more than $200 a year for prescription drugs because we're going to stand up to the greed and corruption and price fixing of the pharmaceutical industry. We need a health care system that guarantees health care to all people, as every other major country does, not a system which provides $100 billion a year in profit for the drug companies and the insurance companies. And to tell you how absurd the system is, tonight on ABC, the healthcare industry will be advertising, telling you how bad Medicare for All is because they want to protect their profits. That is absurd.
Vice President Biden, you were invoked.
George.
You get a response, then we're going to broaden out the discussion.
Okay, number one, my health care plan does significantly cut the cost of it. The largest out-of-pocket payment you'll pay is $1,000. You'll be able to get into anyone who can't afford it gets automatically enrolled in the Medicare type option we have, et cetera. But guess what? Of the 160 million people who like their health care now, they can keep it. If they don't like it, they can leave.
It's Guillermo Moreno, Jarris Jackson, John Machico here. We're gonna be
If you notice, he hadn't answered.
dipping in and out.
Yeah.
So let's go back to Joe telling us what he told us in the first two debates. Here we go.
The tax of 2% that the senator's talking about, that raises about $3 billion. Guess what? That leaves you about $28 billion short. The senator said before it's going to cost you in your pay. There will be a deductible in your paycheck. You're going to, the middle class person, someone making 60 grand with 3 kids, they're going to end up paying $5,000 more. They're going to end up paying 4% more on their income tax. That's a reality. Now, it's not a bad idea. If you like it, I don't like it.
But they're waving down taxis.
But you did invoke both senators.
I wasn't expecting them to get in it, but they're getting in.
Senator Warren, you go first.
So let's be clear. I've actually never met anybody who likes their health insurance company. I've met people.
I like mine.
I like mine.
I've met people who like their nurses. I've met people who like their pharmacists. Met people who
Drug
like their
dealers?
physical therapists. What they want
Drug
is
dealers in white.
access to health care. And we just need to be clear about what Medicare for All is all about. Instead of paying premiums
Joe's
into
laughing at her.
insurance companies and then having insurance companies build their profits by saying no to coverage, we're going to do this by saying everyone is covered by Medicare for All. Every health care provider is covered. And the only question here in terms of difference is where to send the bill.
Senator Sanders.
Let us be clear, Joe. In the United States of America, we are spending twice as much per capita
Than any other
on
country.
health care as the Canadians or any other major
I'm going after him.
on earth.
This is America.
Yeah, but Americans don't want to pay twice as much as other countries. And they guarantee health care to all people. Under my Medicare for All proposal, when you don't pay out of pocket and you don't pay premiums, maybe you have run into people who love their premiums. I have. What people
I'm gonna
want
get that man a
is
windscreen.
cost-effective health care. Medicare for All will save the average American substantial sums of money on his or her health care bill.
Senator Klobuchar, you said in your opening statement you want to represent the people stuck in the middle of the extremes. Who represents the extreme on this stage?
I think you know that I don't agree with some of these proposals up here, George.
Answer the question.
So I'm talking
Which
about
ones?
if I could respond to some of the proposals, but from my friends.
Oh, friends.
Look at Corey
Senator
found the
Sanders
camera.
and I have worked valiantly to bring down the cost of pharmaceuticals. That was a Klobuchar-Sanders amendment to allow for drugs to come in from less expensive countries like Canada. We have worked to bring down the cost by fighting to allow 43 million seniors, that's a bill I lead, to negotiate for better prices under Medicare. I figure that's a lot of seniors and they should be allowed to get a better price. But when it comes to our health care and when it comes to our premiums, I go with the doctor's creed, which is do no harm. And while Bernie wrote the bill, I read the bill. And on
Page 8, paragraph 1.
bill, it says that we will no longer have private insurance as we know it. And that means that 149 million Americans will no longer be able to have their current insurance. That's in 4 years. I don't think that's a bold idea. I think it's a bad idea. And what I favor is something that what Barack Obama wanted to do from the very beginning, and that is a public option, a nonprofit choice that will bring down the cost of insurance, cover 12 million more people, and bring down the prices for 13 million more people. That is a bold idea.
Senator Warren.
Just because you put the word bold in front of it doesn't make it better.
It did get good applause, though.
I'm sorry.
She said page 8 of the bill, 140
Did you read it?
people will lose their health insurance.
Look,
Current health insurance.
149 million.
Million, excuse me.
so
Come on, George.
let's be clear about this. People will have access to all of their doctors, all of their nurses, their community hospitals.
Heard that before.
Their rural hospitals. Doctors won't have to hire people to fill out crazy forms. They won't have to spend time on the phone arguing with insurance companies.
No receptionist,
People
apparently.
who have sick family members won't have to get into these battles. What this is about is making sure that we have the most efficient way possible to pay for health care for everyone in this country. Insurance companies last year sucked $23 billion in profits out of the system. How did they make that money? Every one of those $23 billion was made by an insurance company saying no to your health care company.
The problem, Senator Sanders, with that damn bill that you wrote and that Senator Warren backs is that it doesn't trust the American people. I trust you to choose what makes the most sense for you, not my way or the highway. Now, look, I think we do have to go far beyond tinkering with the ACA. I propose Medicare for all who want it. We take a version of Medicare, we make it available for the American people, and if we're right, as progressives, that that public alternative is better, then the American people will figure that out for themselves. I trust the American people to make the right choice
At what
for
cost?
them. Why don't you?
Senator Sanders, 45 seconds.
George, you talked about, was it 150 million people on private insurance?
George!
50 million of those people lose their private insurance every year when they quit their jobs, or when they go unemployed, or their employer changes their insurance
No, it's called
policy.
Cobra. You can still get it.
Medicare for All is comprehensive health care, covers all basic needs, including home health care. It allows you to go to any doctor you want, which many private insurance company programs do not. So if you want comprehensive health care, freedom of choice regarding doctor or hospital, no more than $200 a year for prescription drugs, taking on the drug companies and the insurance companies, moving to Medicare for All is the way to go.
Senator Harris, you started out co-sponsoring Senator Sanders' bill. You now say you're uncomfortable with it. Why?
I want to give credit first to Barack Obama for really bringing us this far. We would not be here if he hadn't the courage, the talent, or the will to see us this far. I want to give credit to Bernie. Take credit, Bernie.
This is failing already.
This far on Medicare for All. I support Medicare for All. I always have, but I wanted to make the plan better, which I did, which is about offering people choice, not taking that from them. So under my Medicare for All plan, people have the choice of a private plan or a public plan because that's what people want. And I agree we shouldn't take choice from people. But here's the thing. Everybody on this stage, I do believe, is well-intentioned and wants that all Americans have coverage and recognizes that right now 30 million Americans don't have coverage. But at least 5 people have talked, some repeatedly, on this subject, and not once have we talked about Donald Trump. So let's talk about
that's her strategy.
Came into office
that's her strategy.
and spent almost the entire first year of his term trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. We all fought against it, and then the late great John McCain, at that moment, at about 2
Now he's
in the
great.
morning, killed his.
He was a KKK member in 2008, but now he's great.
Care from millions of people in this country. Fast forward to today, and what is happening? Donald Trump's Department of Justice is trying to get rid of the Affordable Care Act. Donald Trump's administration is trying to get rid of the ban that we placed on denying people who have pre-existing conditions coverage. Donald Trump is trying to say that our kids up to the age of 26 can no longer be on
Bernie,
our
stop breathing in the
plans.
mic.
And frankly, I think
can't
this
wait to see
discussion
Trump's
is giving
tweets
the
tomorrow
American
about her.
public a headache. What they want to know is that they're going to have health care and cost will not be a barrier to getting it. But let's focus on the end goal. If we don't get Donald Trump out of office, he's going to get rid of all of it.
That's her strategy, going after the president instead of going after Biden, which is not going to help her. That's everyone's strategy.
15 seconds. Look, everybody says we want an option. The option I'm proposing is a Medicare for all, Medicare for choice. If you want Medicare, if you lose the job from your insurance from your employer, you automatically can buy into this. You don't have no pre-existing condition can stop you from buying in. You get covered. Period. And if you notice, nobody's yet said how much it's going to cost the taxpayer. I hear this large savings. The president my friend from Vermont thinks that the
He's not
employers
president,
give
buddy.
you back if you negotiated his union all these years, got a cut in wages because you got insurance. They're going to give back that money to the employee?
Matter of fact, they will.
Well, let me tell you something. For a socialist, you got a lot more confidence in corporate America than I do.
That was good.
All right. 2 points. All right. Got to defend the fact that today, not only do we have 87 million people uninsured
Here we go.
underinsured,
Again.
you got to defend the fact that 500,000 Americans are going bankrupt. You know why they're going bankrupt? Because they suffered a terrible disease, cancer or heart disease. Under my legislation, people will not go into financial ruin because they suffered with a diagnosis of cancer. And our program is the only one that does that.
I know a lot about cancer. Let me tell you something. It's
Wheelhouse.
personal to me.
About
Let
to
me
get
tell you
serious.
something.
Wheelhouse.
Every single person who is diagnosed with cancer or any other disease can automatically become part of this plan. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They will not go bankrupt because of that. They can join immediately. And we're talking 4, 6,
coming
8,
hot
10
tonight.
years
He came in hot.
I said before we get to Medicare for all. Come on. I've been there. You've been there. You know what it's like. People need help now, hope now, and do something now.
We're 30 minutes away from a malarkey comment. That's malarkey.
I'm telling you, he's having a good night. He's having a good night.
Say a good night.
No, he's having a good night.
He's more forceful.
I'm grateful that we all agree about the urgency of this challenge and the fact that Donald Trump is undermining the limited protections that we have right now.
Does he cuss?
But I also think we're being
The
offered
lower they're
a
polling,
false
the more they
choice
want to talk
between
about Trump.
those who propose an all-or-nothing gambit, forcing tens of millions off of insurance that they like, that works for them, to force them onto Medicare, and others who want to, as a vice president does, incrementally improve what we have, which will still leave many, maybe millions, uninsured and uncared for in a state like Texas, where the largest provider of mental health care services is the county jail system. We've got to do better. In my proposal, Medicare for America says everyone who's uninsured will be enrolled in Medicare. Everyone who's insufficiently insured, cannot afford it, can move over to Medicare. And those, like members of unions who fought for the health care plans that work for them and their families, are able to keep them. That is the best possible path forward.
Health care is the top issue for everyone in the country. I want to make sure everyone gets 1 minute to respond. So Secretary Castro, Andrew Yang, and then Senator Booker.
Forgot about them.
Thank you. And, I also want to recognize the work that Bernie has done on this. And, of course, we owe a debt of gratitude to President Barack Obama. Of course, I also work for President Obama, Vice President Biden. And I know that the problem with your plan is that it leaves 10 million people uncovered. Now, on the last debate stage in Detroit, you said that wasn't true. When Senator Harris brought that up, there was a fact check of that, and they said that was true. I grew up with a grandmother who had type 2 diabetes, and I watched her condition get worse and worse. But that whole
All
time she
Latinos
had
like
Medicare.
that's huge in our.
I want every single
foot?
American
She's just
family
hopping around?
to have a strong
Castro granny?
Medicare plan available. If they choose to hold on to strong, solid private health insurance, I believe they should be able to do that. But the difference between what I support and what you support, Vice President Biden, is that you require them to opt in. And I would not require them to opt in. They would automatically be enrolled. They wouldn't have to buy in. That's a big difference, because Barack Obama's vision was not to leave 10 million people uncovered. He wanted every single person in this country covered. My plan would do that. Your plan would not.
They do not have to buy in. They do not have to buy in.
You just said that. You just said that 2 minutes ago. You just said 2 minutes ago that they would have to buy in. You said they would have to buy in.
Have to buy in if she qualifies.
Are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago? Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago?
That's a strategy right there.
I can't believe.
What are Bernie and Biden talking about now?
Hey, remind me what I say.
You're forgetting that.
I said anyone like your grandmother who has no money.
We need a healthcare system.
You're automatically enrolled.
Enrolls people.
Come on, Biden.
Regardless of whether they choose to opt in or not.
Get back in the ring.
If you lose your job, for instance, his health care plan would not automatically enroll you. You would have to opt in. My health care plan would. That's a big difference. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not.
I'll be surprised to him.
I'll be surprised to him.
He can jab. He can jab.
This is why presidential debates are becoming unwatchable. This reminds everybody of what they cannot stand about.
He's like the Marianne Williamson of this debate.
Each other, poking at each other, and telling each other that you're my plan, your plan. Look, we all.
Yeah, that's
have
called a
different
Democratic
visions for
primary
what is
election.
Better about
That's
our
called an election. That's an election.
Yeah, that's a good point.
This is what we're here for.
We're not going to jab now. When we going to jab?
Yeah, but a house,
Andrew Yang.
divided cannot stand.
Oh my God.
That's original.
We know we're on the same team here. We know we're on the same team. We all have a better vision for health care than our current president. And I believe we're talking about this the wrong way. As someone who has run a business, I know that our current health care system makes it harder to hire people, makes it harder to give them benefits and treat them as full-time employees. You instead pretend they're contractors. It's harder to change jobs. It's certainly harder to start a business. The pitch we have to make to the American people is we will get the health care weight off of your backs and then unleash the hopes and dreams of the American people.
Senator Booker.
Now, I am Asian, so I know a lot of doctors, and they tell me that they spend a lot of time on paperwork, avoiding being sued, and navigating the insurance bureaucracy. We have to change the incentives so instead of revenue and activity, people are focused on our health in the healthcare system. And the Cleveland Clinic,
That's
where
racist.
they're paid not based upon how many procedures they prescribe, shocker, they prescribe fewer procedures, and patient health stays the same or improves. That is the pitch to the American people.
Senator Booker, close.
Never gave a plan. Never gave a plan. No, I'm Asian. I know a lot of doctors.
There are a lot
So
of
trust
people
because I'm
watching at
Asian.
home right now, listening to us, that are afraid because they
That's the
are in
same
crisis.
suit from
They
the
don't
last
have health
debate?
insurance. Their health insurance doesn't go far enough. They can't afford their prescription drugs. Look, I'm clear in what I believe. I believe in Medicare for all.
Of course you do.
I believe it's the best way to rationalize the system. But dear God, I know that every one of my colleagues on this stage is in favor of universal health coverage and comes at this with the best of intentions. And I'll tell you, there is an urgency right now in this nation. Everybody feels it. And as a person who has an ideal, I know we cannot sacrifice progress on the altar of purity. Because people in my community, they need help right now. They have high blood pressure right now. They have unaffordable insulin right now. And this must be a moment where we as Democrats can begin to show that we can not only stake and stand our ground, but find common ground, because we've got one shot to make Donald Trump a one-term president.
You're right.
And we
Everybody
cannot
that's-
lose
everybody
it
that's low in the
by the
polls
way we
hitting
talk
Trump.
about each other or demonize and degrade each other. We can walk and chew gum at the same time. If I am the leader, I will work towards the ideal of health insurance, health coverage being a right for all Americans. But every single day, I'll join with other Democrats to make progress happen in our nation for the people that are struggling and suffering today.
Never gave a
Candidates,
plan.
thank you, Lindsey.
No,
Davis.
no,
Never gave
no,
a plan.
no.
Thanks, George.
Since we're here at an HBCU, I'd like to
she?
start with young black voters. Several recent polls indicate their
Reparations.
number one concern is racism. This campus, this state, and this nation are still raw from that racially motivated attack on Latinos in El Paso. Now, we know that the racial divide started long before President Trump and President Obama, but each of you on this stage has said that President Trump has made that divide worse. Congressman O'Rourke, coming to you first, why are you the most qualified candidate to address this divide?
You know, I called this out in no uncertain terms on August 3rd and every day since then, and I was talking about it long before then as well. Racism in America is endemic. It is foundational. We can mark the creation of this country not at the 4th of July, 1776, but August 20th, 1619, when the first kidnapped African was brought to this country against his will and in bondage and as a slave, built the greatness and the success and the wealth that neither he nor his descendants would ever be able to fully participate in and enjoy. We have to be able to answer this challenge, and it is found in our education system, where in Texas, a 5-year-old child in kindergarten is 5 times as likely to be disciplined or suspended or expelled based on the color of their skin. In our healthcare system, where there is a maternal mortality crisis 3 times as deadly for women of color.
Talking about babies?
or the fact
Oh,
that
no.
There's 10 times the wealth in white America than there is in black America. I'm going to follow Sheila Jackson Lee's lead and sign into law a reparations bill that will allow us to address this at its foundations. But we will also call out the fact that we have a white supremacist in the White House, and he poses a mortal threat to people of color all across this country.
Mortal. Combat. Combat or what?
Yeah, no, the president is going to kill minorities, apparently, according to Beto.
For how well he's spoken to the passion and the frustration and the sadness after what happened in his hometown of El Paso. He's done a great job with that. Look, a few weeks ago, a shooter drove 10 hours inspired by this president to kill people who look like me and people who look like my family. White supremacy is a growing threat to this country, and we have to root it out. I'm proud that I put forward a plan to disarm hate. I'm also proud that I was the first to put forward a police reform plan, because we're not going to have any more Laquan McDonald's or Eric Garners or Michael Browns.
Oh, wow.
I'm so glad you can remember their names.
Or Walter Scott's or Sandra Bland here from the Houston area. We need to root out racism, and I believe that we can do that, because that doesn't represent the vast majority of Americans who do have a good heart.
He said
We
police
also need
reform.
a leader to match
Police
that,
reform.
and I will be a president that matches that.
I hope everybody caught
Senator
that.
Booker,
Police
you
reform
have
is how he's
said,
going to do that.
quote, the real question isn't who is or isn't a racist. It's who's going to do something about it. Senator, what do you plan to do about it?
Well, first and foremost, I want to hit that point, because we know Donald Trump's a racist, but there is no
Universal
red bag
truth.
of courage for calling him that. When racism exists,
no courage
the
in calling
question
him
isn't
that.
Who isn't
Everyone
a
does
racist
every day.
and isn't doing something about racism. And this is not just an issue that started yesterday. It's not just an issue that we hear a president that can't condemn white supremacy. We have systemic racism that is eroding our nation from healthcare to the criminal justice system. And it's nice to go all the way back to slavery, but dear God, we have a criminal justice system that is so racially biased. We have more African Americans under criminal supervision today than all the slaves in 1850. We have to come at this issue attacking systemic racism, having the courage to call it out, and having a plan to do something about it. If I am president of the United States, we will create an office in the White House to deal with the problem of white supremacy and hate crimes. And we will make sure that systemic racism
10 by 10 office in the White House is going to solve this.
Plans from criminal justice reform to the disparities
is
in
that office next to the reproductive office that he also said he was going to have?
Which is the racism that we see in environmental injustice in communities of color all around this country.
Climate change is racist. It's only bad in poor communities.
With issues around race.
It's snowing in Clovis right now.
You've also said that anyone who votes to re-elect President Trump is at best looking the other way on racism. Does that sort of talk alienate voters and potentially deepen divisions in our country?
I believe what's deepened divisions in the country is the conduct of this president, and we have a chance to change all of that. Look, systemic racism preceded this president, and even when we defeat him, it will be with us. That's why we need a systemic approach to dismantle it. It's not enough to just take a racist policy, replace it with a neutral one, and expect things will just get better on their own. Harms compound. In the same way that a dollar saved compound, so does a dollar stolen. And we know that the generational theft of the descendants of slaves is part of why everything from housing to education to health to employment basically puts us in two different countries. I have proposed the most comprehensive vision to tackle systemic racism in every one of these areas, marshaling as many resources as went into the Marshall Plan that rebuilt Europe, but this time a Douglas Plan that we invest right here at home to make sure that we're not only dealing with things like the over-incarceration of black Americans, but also black solutions, entrepreneurship, raising to 25% the target for the federal government to do business with minority-owned businesses, investing in HBCUs that are training and educating the next generation of entrepreneurs. We can and must do that, but that means transcending this framework that pits us against each other, that pits a single black mother of three against a displaced auto worker. Because where I come from, a lot of times that displaced auto worker is a single black mother of three. We've got to say that and bring people together.
Also a concern for people of color is criminal justice
Did he
reform.
really say where he comes from, the black people don't even like him?
Yeah, they don't.
What are you talking about?
It does contradict some of your prior positions. Among them, you used to oppose the legalization
She fails
of
when she's
marijuana.
cornered.
Now you don't.
Watch this.
You used to oppose outside investigations of police shootings.
Just remember,
now you
I'm a
don't.
black
You've said that
woman.
you changed on these and other things because you were, quote, swimming against the current, and thankfully the currents have changed. But when you had the power, why didn't you try to effect change then?
And the audience likes it too.
There have been, I'm glad you asked me this question.
No, you're not.
There have been many distortions of my record. Let me be very clear. I made a decision to become a prosecutor for two reasons. One, I've always wanted to protect people and keep them safe. And second, I was born knowing about how this criminal justice system in America has worked in a way that has been informed by racial bias. And I could tell you extensively about the experiences I and my family members have personally had. But I made a decision that if I was going to have the ability to reform the system, I would try to do it from the inside. And so I took on the position that allowed me, without asking permission, to create one of the first in the nation initiatives that was a model and became a national model around people who were arrested for drugs and getting them jobs. I created one of the first in the nation requirements that a state law enforcement agency would have to wear cameras and keep them on full time. I created one of the first in the nation trainings for police officer on the issue of racial bias and the need to reform the system. Was I able to get enough done? Absolutely not. But my plan has been described by activists as being a bold and comprehensive plan.
That means it's good.
That is about ending mass incarceration.
Activist is such a low bar. Anyone with an internet connection is an activist.
Antifa has approved my plan.
Prisons on day one.
We're almost to the point to where they'll say
what
that.
we need to do. to hold law enforcement, including prosecutors, accountable. And finally, my plan is about making sure that in America's criminal justice system, we de-incarcerate women and children, that we end solitary confinement, and that we work on keeping families intact. And as President of the United States, knowing the system from the inside, I will have the ability to be an effective leader and get this job complete.
Thank you, Senator Harris.
Prosecutor
Senator
wants to let the
Klobuchar,
criminals go.
During your 8 years as a prosecutor
And reform
in
the cops.
Minnesota, there were dozens of incidents where black men were killed by police. Critics say that too often you sided with police in these cases. The ACLU's legal director in Minnesota has said that you showed no interest in racial justice. Do you wish now that you had done more?
That's not my record. We are here at a historically black college. And I think of an alum of that college, Barbara Jordan, and something that she once said. She said, what the people want is simple. They want a country as good as its promise. And that same can be said of the criminal justice system. So when I was there, the way we handled these police shootings, I actually took a stand to make sure outside investigators handled them. I took on our major police chief in Minneapolis. But in the prosecutor's office, they were handled with the grand jury. That's how they were all handled across our state. I now believe it is better for accountability if the prosecutor handles them and makes those decisions herself. That aside, I am proud of the work our staff did, 400 people in our office. The cases that came to us, the African-American community that came to us, they said there was no justice for their little kids. There was a kid named Byron Phillips that was shot on his front porch. No one had bothered to figure out who did it. When I came into that office, we worked with the community groups, we put up billboards, we found the shooter, and we put him in jail. We did the same for the killer of a little girl named Taisha Edwards, who was doing her homework at her kitchen table and was shot through the window. What changes did we make? Go after white-collar crimes in a big way. Diversify the office in a big way. Work with the Innocence Project to make sure we do much better with eyewitness ID. And as a senator and as your president, I will make sure that we don't just do the First Step Act when it comes to criminal sentencing, that we move to the Second Step Act, which means the 90% of people that are incarcerated in local and state jails, let's reduce those sentences for nonviolent offenders, and let's get them jobs and let them vote when they get out of prison.
Thank you, Senator Klobuchar. You all believe that the war on drugs has put too many Americans behind bars. Vice President Biden, you have a plan to release many nonviolent drug offenders from prison. Senator Booker says that your plan is not ambitious enough. Your response?
Well, first of all, let me say that when I came back from law school, I had a job with a big-time law firm. I left and became a public defender because my state was under siege. When Dr. King was assassinated, we were occupied by the National Guard for 10 months. I've been involved from the beginning. As a young congressman, as a young councilman, I introduced legislation to try to keep them putting a sewer plant in the poor neighborhood. I made sure that we dealt with redlining. Banks should have to lend where they operate, et cetera. The fact of the matter is that what's happened is that we're in a situation now where there are so many people who are in jail and shouldn't be in jail. The whole means by which this should change is the whole model has to change. We should be talking about rehabilitation. Nobody should be in jail for a nonviolent crime. As when we were in the White House, we released 36,000 people from the federal prison system. Nobody should be in jail for a drug problem. They should be going directly to a rehabilitation. We build more rehabilitation centers, not prisons. I'm the guy that put in the drug courts to divert people from the criminal justice system. And so we have to change the whole way we look at this. And we put people in prison, we have to equip them when they get out. Nobody who got in prison for marijuana, for example, immediately upon being released, they shouldn't be in there for that should be a misdemeanor. They should be out and their record should be expunged. Every single right should be returned.
Should be a
when
misdemeanor.
you finish your term in prison, you should be able to not only vote, but have access to Pell Grants, have access to be able to get housing, have access to be able to move along the way. I've laid out a detailed plan along those lines. And the fact is we've learned so much more.
Thank you, Mr. Vice President. Senator Booker, 45 seconds.
Put him out his misery.
Hey, I'm done. All right. You want me to stop? Okay.
Our criminal justice system is so savagely broken. There's no difference in America between blacks, whites, and Latinos for using drugs or dealing drugs. But if you're African American, you're almost 4 times more likely to be arrested and incarcerated, destroying your lives. And so much of this comes down to privilege. We have a criminal justice system But Brian Stevenson says,
Lay it on
better
us,
if
Milk
you're rich
Dud.
and guilty than if you're poor and innocent. And so I have challenged this whole field. We can specifically and demonstratively now show that there are 17,000 people unjustly incarcerated in America, and all of us should come forward and say, when we are president of the United States, when I am president of the United States, we will release them. And let me be specific. I joined together and led in the United States Senate the only major bipartisan bill passed under this president for criminal justice reform that has only led to thousands of people coming out of jail. If 87 members of the United States Senate says that these sentences are way too long, and we changed it, but we didn't make it retroactive, we could literally point to the people that are in jail unjustly right now. Everyone on this stage should say that we are going to give clemency to these 17,000 people. And I challenge you, don't just say big statements, back it up with details of the people in prison right now looking for one of the most sacrosanct ideals of this nation, which is liberty and freedom. We need to reform this system, and we must do it now. Every day we wait is too long.
Thank you, Lindsey. I want to turn to the deadly mass shootings here in this country, and of course we are all mindful tonight of where we stand. We are here in Texas tonight, where 29 people have lost their lives in just the last month alone. El Paso, which we've discussed, in Odessa, and I know there are survivors from El Paso right here in the hall tonight. Vice President Biden, I do want to direct this to you because we all remember Sandy Hook. 26 people died in that school, 20 of them children. Those first graders would be in 8th grade today. At the time, there was a groundswell in this country to get something done. President Obama asked you to lead the push for gun control. You have often pointed to your ability to reach across the aisle to get things done. But 4 months after Sandy Hook, a measure to require expanded background checks died on the Senate floor. If you couldn't get it done after Sandy Hook, why should voters give you another chance?
Because it got done before. I'm the only one up here who's ever beat the NRA. Only one ever beat the NRA nationally. I'm the guy that brought the Brady Bill into focus and became law. And so that's number one. Number two, after Sandy Hook, a number of things happened. It went from a cause to a movement. Look what's happened now. Mothers, the organization, Mothers Against Violence, gun violence. We've seen what's happened again.
Thought it was
now
Moms
we have
Demand
all these
Action.
young people
I think you just butchered
marching
the name.
on Washington, making sure that things are going to change. There has been a sea change. Those proposals I put forward for the president had over 50% of members of the NRA supporting them, and overwhelmingly the rest of the people supporting them. Now the numbers are much higher because they realize what I've been saying, and we've all been saying, is correct. Over 90% of the American people think we have to get assault weapons off the street, period. And we have to get buybacks and get them out of their basements. So the point is, things have changed, and things have changed a lot. And now what's happening is, and by the way Beto handled, excuse me for saying Beto, what Congressman...
That's all right.
That's what he wants to be called.
That's what the sign in studio says.
What happened in his hometown is meaningful. To look in the eyes of those people, to see those kids, to understand those parents, you understand the heartache.
But this is
we
the
are
problem.
ready to do this.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. You did bring up assault weapons here. You did bring up assault weapons here, and many of you on this stage have talked about executive orders. Senator Harris, you have said that you would take executive action on guns within your first 100 days, including banning imports of AR-15 assault weapons.
That's right.
President Obama, after
That's
Sandy
literally
Hook,
not
more than
possible.
23 executive actions, and yet here we
Imports
all are
of-
today. In recent days, former Vice President Biden has said about executive orders, some really talented people are seeking the nomination. They said, I'm going to issue an executive order. Biden saying there's no constitutional authority to issue that executive order when they say I'm going to eliminate assault weapons, saying you can't do it by executive order any more than Trump can do things when he says he can do it by executive order. Does the Vice President have a point there?
Some things you can, many things you can't.
Let's let the Senator
He just
answer.
interrupted a black woman.
Well, I mean, I would just say, hey, Joe, instead of saying no, we can't, let's say yes, we can.
Let's be constitutional. We got a
And
constitution.
yes, we can, because I'll tell you something. The way that I think about this is I've seen more autopsy photographs than I care to tell you. I have attended more police officer funerals than I care to tell you. I have hugged more mothers of homicide victims than I care to tell you. And the idea that we would wait for this Congress, which has just done nothing, to Act
Nothing.
is
Gotta say it like a black lady.
It is overlooking
Not
the
nothing,
fact that
nothing.
every day in America, our babies are going to school to have drills, elementary, middle, and high school students.
Me too.
Where they are learning about how they have to hide in a closet or crouch in a corner if there is a mass shooter roaming the hallways of their school. I was talking about this at one of my town halls, and this child, it was 8 years old probably, came up to me. It was like it was a secret between the two of us, and he tugged on my jacket and he said, "I had to have one of those drills." It is traumatizing our children. El Paso and Beto, God love you for standing so courageously in the midst of that tragedy. You know, people asked me
Did a bunch of
in El
television
Paso, they
interviews
said,
cussing and
you know, 'cause
bashing
I have
the
a
president.
long-standing record on this issue. They said, "Well, do you think Trump is responsible for what happened?" And I said, "Well, look, I mean, obviously he didn't pull the trigger, but he's certainly been tweeting out the ammunition."
Senator Harris, thank you. Vice President Biden, do you still stand
Just
by
came
what you
across
said
to
on your
her.
What
Yeah.
I said was the question, speak to constitutional scholars. If, in fact, we could
Like
say,
Joe.
by the way, you can't own
Joe's
the
like a
following
Republican.
weapon, period.
How much does it cost?
Cannot be
What does the
sold anymore.
Constitution say? Jeez.
Check with constitutional scholars. Now, you
Mr. Vice
can't
President,
say-
thank you.
could I tell
Congressman
you what you
O'Rourke, I
could
want to
do?
come to you on
Respond.
this.
100 days.
I'm going to work down the row here, but I do want to come to Congressman O'Rourke because I know this is personal to you.
having a
El
fight
Paso
and a
is your
war on any of
hometown. Some on this stage have suggested
Warren's
a
like, I could've
voluntary
stayed home.
buyback for guns in this country. You've gone further. You said, quote, Americans who own AR-15s and AK-47s will have to sell them to the government, all of them. You know the critics call this confiscation. Are you proposing taking away their guns, and how would this
Let's see how he explains this away.
I am. If it's a weapon that was designed to kill people on a
Well,
battlefield,
weapons aren't designed to kill people. They're just.
if the high impact, high velocity round, when it hits your body, shreds everything inside of your body because it was designed to do that so that you would bleed to death on a battlefield and not be able to get up and kill one of our soldiers. When we see that being used against children, and in Odessa, I met the mother of a 15-year-old girl who was shot by an AR-15, and that mother watched her bleed to death over the course of an hour because so many other people were shot by that AR-15 in Odessa and Midland. There weren't enough ambulances to get to them in time. Hell yes, we're going to take your AR-15, your AK-47. We're not going to allow it to be used against our fellow Americans anymore.
Congressman, thank you.
And I want to say this.
Using an emotional argument. I mean,
I'm listening to the people of this country. The day after I proposed doing that, I went to a gun show in Conway, Arkansas, to meet with those who are selling AR-15s and AK-47s and those who are buying those weapons. And you might be surprised, there was some common ground there. Folks who said, I would willingly give that up, cut it to pieces. I don't need this weapon to hunt, to defend myself. It is a weapon of war. So let's do the right thing, but let's bring everyone in America into the conversation. Republicans, Democrats, gun owners, and non-gun owners alike.
The criminals are dying to
I
do
want to
that.
bring in Senator Klobuchar.
Let's
on
bring
this,
everybody
because
in. But we're just going to take all the guns.
And the Proud Hunters back home in Minnesota. So I wanted to get your response.
I want to hear about our Uncle Buck again.
Where do you
In the
stand
deer
on mandatory
stand. Tell
gun
me
buybacks?
about Uncle Buck.
I so appreciate what the congressman's been doing, and I want to remind people here that what unites us is so much bigger than what divides us.
Guys, what has he
Everyone
been
up
doing
here
besides
favors
cursing?
an assault weapon
What
ban.
is-
Everyone up here favors magazine limitations, which, by the way, would have made a huge difference if that was in place in El Paso, in that store where all those ordinary people showed such extraordinary courage, and certainly in Dayton, Ohio, where in 30 seconds, one man guns down innocent people. The cops got there in 1 minute, and it still wasn't enough to save those people. That's what unites us. You know what else unites us? And I'll tell you this, what unites us is that right now on Mitch McConnell's desk are 3 bills. Universal background checks, closing the Charleston loophole, and passing my bill to make sure that domestic abusers don't get AK-47.
Senator
So we
Klobuchar.
want to get something done. And I personally think we should start with a voluntary buyback program. That's what I think, David. But I want to
They act
finish
like
this
getting a
because if you want
47 is
action
as easy
now,
as getting a Big
if you want
Mac.
action now, we got to send a message to Mitch McConnell. We can't wait until one of us gets in the White House. We have to pass those bills right now to get this done.
Senator
because we
Klobuchar.
cannot spare another innocent life.
Thank you. Thank you. I want to turn to Senator Booker because you have said just this week about guns and about the candidates on this stage that the differences do matter. Those were your words. You have argued if you need a license to drive a car in this country, you should have a license to buy a gun. Gun owners would not only have to pass a background check, they would have to obtain a federal license to buy a gun. This would require, as you know, Congress to pass legislation. If Democrats can't get universal background checks, how would you get this done? And can you name one Republican colleague of yours in the Senate right now who would be on board with this idea?
Tell us if you got a friend.
Background checks.
Tell us who we need to go after.
Gun licensing. These are agreed to by overwhelmingly the majority of Americans. 83% of Americans agree with licensing. This is the issue. Look, I grew up in the suburbs. It was about 20 years ago that I came out of my home when I moved to inner city Newark, New Jersey, and witnessed the aftermath of a shooting. It's one of the reasons why shooting after shooting after shooting in neighborhoods like mine for decades, this has been a crisis for me. It's why I was the first person to come out for gun licensing. And I'm happy that people like Beto O'Rourke are showing such courage now and coming forward and also now supporting licensing.
He's so courageous.
But this is what I'm sorry about. I'm sorry that it had to take issues coming to my neighborhood or personally affecting Beto to suddenly make us demand change. This is a crisis of empathy in our nation. We are never going to solve this crisis if we have to wait for it to personally affect us or our neighborhood or our community before we demand action. You want to know how we get this done? We get this done by having a more courageous empathy.
Why does he always look so mad
People don't wait for
and
this
mean?
hell to visit upon their communities.
It's the bald
They stand
head.
up and understand the truth of what King said, that injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. I will lead change on this issue because I have seen what the carnage creates in communities like mine, because we forget national shootings, these mass shootings are tragedies, but the majority of the homicide victims come from neighborhoods like mine. Nobody
He says
has ascended to the
neighborhoods
White
like
House
mine. One
that
more
will bring
time.
more personal passion on this
We
issue.
get it. You
I
live
will
in the
fight
ghetto.
this and bring a fight to the NRA and the corporate gun lobby like they have never seen before.
Senator Booker, thank you. A quick follow-up, though, because Americans watching tonight know the reality of Congress in Washington. I asked, do you have a Republican colleague in the Senate who would be on board with this idea to get this done?
You know, if that was the attitude when Strom Thurmond had the longest filibuster ever on civil rights, if it was this idea that we can't get it done because of the situation in the
Like,
Senate,
if that was the attitude?
I'm
You
looking
need
to
bipartisan
lead a
support.
movement. The number one reason why governments are formed is to protect the citizenry. Think about this. We have had more people die due to gun violence in my lifetime than every single war in this country combined from the Revolutionary War till now. This is not a side issue to me. It is a central issue to me. That is the kind of fight, because the majority of homicide victims, we have a mass shooting every single day in communities like mine. We must awaken a more courageous empathy in this country so that we stand together and fight together and overwhelm those Republicans who are not even representing their constituency.
This was a yes or no
because
question.
the majority of
No, he's
Americans,
only- give me a
the majority of
Republican.
gun owners agree with me, not the corporate gun lobby. It is time for a
Yeah, give me a
movement
name,
on this
give me a name.
issue.
I'm just trying to figure out who needs a
Senator
primary
Thank you.
challenger.
Senator Warren, I want to come to you next.
Senator Warren,
Because you have
after
actually
20
said
minutes.
in recent days that there are things you can get done with Republicans in the Senate. What can you get done on gun control?
So let's start by framing the problem the right way. We have a gun violence problem in this country. The mass shootings are terrible, but they get all the headlines. Children die every day on streets, in neighborhoods, on playgrounds. People die from violence, from suicide and domestic abuse. We have a gun violence problem in this country, and we agree on many steps we could take to fix it. My view on this is it's not going to be one and done on this. We're going to do it, and we're going to have to do it again, and we're going to have to come back some more until we cut the number of gun
Till there's no
deaths
guns.
in this country
That's what she's saying.
significantly. But here's the
You can't pick up all the guns in America in one day, Guillermo. You got to give them a few
That's what
days.
she's gonna come back.
Yeah, you got to come back to get them.
Country, 90% of Americans want to see us do. I like registration.
I'm sure you do.
Not on voting.
Want to get assault weapons off the streets. Why doesn't it happen? And the answer is corruption, pure and simple. We have a Congress that is beholden to the gun industry And unless we're willing to address that head on and roll back the filibuster, we're not going to get anything done on guns. I was in the United States Senate when 54 senators said, let's do background checks, let's get rid of assault weapons. And with 54 senators, it failed because of the filibuster. Until we attack the systemic problems, we can't get gun reform in this country. We've got to go straight against the industry, and we've got to change Congress so it doesn't just work for the wealthy and well-connected, so it works for the people.
Senator Warren, thank you. You bring up eliminating the filibuster, which means you would need simply a simple majority in a Republican Senate to get something done. I want to turn to Senator Sanders on this, because you've said before of this, if Donald Trump supports ending the filibuster, which he's talked about himself, you should be nervous. Would you support ending the filibuster?
No, but what I would support absolutely is passing major legislation, the gun legislation that people here are talking about, Medicare for all, climate change.
He sounds extra raspy tonight. Is it just me?
I will not wait for 60 votes to make that happen. And you could do it in a variety of ways. You could do that through budget reconciliation law. You have a vice president who will, in fact, tell the Senate what is appropriate and what is not, what is in order and what is not. But I want to get back to a point that Elizabeth made, and that, in fact, in terms of gun issues, and picking up on Corey and Beto and everybody else, what we are looking at is a corrupt political system. And that means whether it is the drug companies or the insurance companies or the fossil fuel industry determining what's happening in Washington, or in this case, you got an NRA, which has intimidated the President of the United States and the Republican leadership. I am proud that year after year I had an F rating from the NRA, and as president,
it's the same line.
That's the same
line.
F, give him credit. F, that's the same grade he got in his economic class. Same grade.
Thank you very much. We've been hearing a lot about what's been happening here in Texas.
Oh, God. Boy, Jorge.
A few weeks ago,
sorry.
The deadliest massacre of Latinos in modern U.S. history happened in this state, in El Paso. So the fear among Latinos, and you know this, is very real. So let me start with an issue that is causing a lot of division.
Immigration?
In this country. Immigration.
There we go.
Vice President Biden, as a presidential candidate,
Honestly, got to it kind of late,
in
later than I thought.
2008, you supported the border wall, saying, unlike most Democrats, I voted for 700 miles of fence. This is what you said. Then you served as vice president in an administration that deported 3 million people, the most ever in U.S. history. Did you do anything to prevent those deportations?
Here come the fireworks,
you didn't ask
guys.
this question before and refused to answer, so let me try once again. Are you prepared to say tonight that you and President Obama made a mistake about deportations? Why should Latinos trust you?
What Latinos should look at is comparing this president to the president we have is outrageous, number one. We didn't lock people up in cages. We didn't separate families.
You started it. Oh, my God. You started it.
Number one. Number two, by the time this is the president
He also
who came
said
along
comparing this president to the president
program.
we have.
No one had ever done that before. This is the president who sent legislation to the desk saying he wants to find a pathway for the 11 million undocumented in the United States of America. This is the president who's done a great deal. So I'm proud to have served with him. What I would do as president is several more things, because things have changed. I would, in fact, make sure that we immediately surge to the border. All those people are seeking asylum. They deserve to be heard. That's who we are. We're a nation that says if you want to flee and you're fleeing oppression, you should come. I would change the order that the president just changed, saying women who were being beaten and abused could no longer claim that as a reason for asylum. And by the way, retrospectively, you know, the 25th anniversary of the Violence Against Women Act is up. The Republican Congress has not reauthorized it. Let's put pressure on them to pass the
He's
Violence Against
shifting.
Women
He's
Act.
like, all right, let's not remember.
Yeah, but you didn't answer
Here we
the
go.
question.
It's all about women getting beat.
Did you make a mistake with those deportations?
The president did the best thing that was able to be done at the time.
How about you?
I'm the vice president of the United States.
Secretary Castro,
I'm a yes man.
would you want to respond to Vice President Biden?
He's helping out. Helping out his fellow Latino.
the White House and Congress in 2009 and didn't pass immigration reform. And this broke a promise made by President Barack Obama to Latinos. So why should voters trust Democrats now? I mean, now it is even more difficult, as you know, because you need Republican votes in the Senate. So are you willing, for instance, to give up DACA or give up a path to citizenship or even agree to build a wall in order to legalize 10.5 million undocumented immigrants?
Jorge, thank you very much for that question. And look, I agree that Barack Obama was very different from Donald Trump. Donald Trump has a dark heart when it comes to immigrants. He built his whole political career so far on scapegoating and fear-mongering and otherizing migrants, and that's very different for Barack Obama. But my problem with Vice President Biden, and Corey pointed this out last time, is every time something good about Barack Obama comes up, he says, oh, I was there, I was there, I was there. That's me too. And then every time somebody questions part of the administration that we were both part of, he says, well, that was the president. I mean, he wants to take credit for Obama's work, but not have to answer.
We said that yesterday, Johnny.
Vice President Biden.
You got to ride it till the wheels fall off.
That's what he did. That's what I said.
Let me just say that I was the first candidate in early April to put forward an immigration plan. You know why? Because I'm not afraid of Donald Trump on this issue. I'm not going to backpedal. I'm not going to pretend like I don't have my own vision for immigration. So we're not going to give up DACA. We're not going to give up protections for anybody. I believe that on January 20th, 2021, we're going to have a Democratic president. We're going to throw out Mitch McConnell and John Cornyn and have a Democratic Senate and a Democratic House, and we're going to pass immigration reform within the first 100 days.
Vice President, 45 seconds.
It's really all it takes for them to lose their minds.
I stand with Barack Obama all 8 years, good, bad, and indifferent. That's where I stand. I did not say I did not stand with him.
Okay, Senator Warren, hundreds of children have been separated from their parents at the border, and recently in Mississippi we saw the largest immigration raid in a decade. You want to replace ICE, the agency in charge of rounding up undocumented
Replace
immigrants.
or obliterate?
So how would you deal with the millions of immigrants who arrive legally but overstay their visas? And how would you stop hundreds of thousands of Central Americans who want to migrate to the U.S.?
Well, I start with a statement of principles, and that is, in this country, immigration does not make us weaker. Immigration makes us stronger. I want to see us expand legal immigration and create a pathway to citizenship for our dreamers, but also for their grandparents and for their cousins, for people who overstayed student visas, and for people who came here to work in the fields. I want to have a system that is a path to citizenship that is fair and achievable. Down at the border, we've got to rework this entirely. A system right now that cannot tell the difference in the threat posed by a terrorist, a criminal, and a 12-year-old girl is not a system that is keeping us safer, and it is not serving our values.
She's a moron.
Yeah, absolutely. What's legal is legal. What's illegal is illegal. Forget about it.
Part on this, because I think we have to look at all the pieces.
He's an idiot.
Why do we have a crisis at the border?
Believe everybody at the border and whatever they say they are, who they are.
Withdrawn help from people in Central America who are suffering. We need to restore that help. We need to help establish and reestablish the rule of law so that people don't feel like they
She said just the opposite.
Open borders is now the rule of law.
What an idiot.
Donald Trump has created and hopes to profit from politically. We have to have the courage to stand up.
He's lost billions doing this.
Mr. Yang, it is true that in the last few years we have seen the most severe
They're going to get $1,000. It's going to be good.
Kids in cages to limiting asylum for people fleeing gangs.
ISIS, you want to rebuild, just come in, we'll get $1,000.
That about 1 million immigrants enter the U.S. legally every year. So are you willing to raise the number of legal immigrants from 1 million to 2 million per year? And should there be a merit system, as President Trump wants?
So, yeah. Oh, I'm sorry. Did you ask me? Or?
You're not an Asian male.
Sorry.
My father grew up on a peanut farm in Asia with no floor, and now his son is running for president. That is the immigration story that we have to be able to share with the American people. If you look at our history, almost half of Fortune 500 companies were founded by their immigrants or children of immigrants, and rates of business formation are much higher in immigrant communities.
Lazy Americans.
We have to say to the American people, immigrants are positive for our economic and social dynamism, And I would return the level of legal immigration to the point it was under the Obama-Biden administration. I think we have to compete for talent, and I am the opposite of Donald Trump in many ways. He says build a wall. I'm going to say to immigrants, come to America, because if you come here, your son or daughter can run for president. The water is great, and this is where you want to build a company, build a family, and build a life. This country has been a magnet for human capital for generations.
Hey, Andrew, that's kind of that's the sign already outside.
For continued success.
The water's great. Not Flint!
Alcalde Pete, tengo una pregunta para usted.
Oh, Spanish! Here we go.
No, Spanish.
Alcalde Pete, 8 out of 10 Latinos in Texas for another.
You
mass
gotta
shooting
translate it when they
targeting
start doing
This is
that.
according to a new Univision poll. President Trump has called Mexican immigrants rapists and killers.
Fake news.
Muslims from
God.
entering the
Wrong.
country and separated
Wrong.
children from their parents. His supporters have chanted, build the wall and send her back. Do you think that people who support President Trump and his immigration policies are racist?
Anyone who supports this is supporting racism. Este es racismo y es sencillo.
What did he just say?
The only people
This is
who actually
racism
buy into
and
this
it's
president's
sincere.
hateful rhetoric around immigrants are people who don't know any. We have an opportunity to build an American majority around immigration reform. In my community, a group of conservative Republicans rallied around an individual, a beloved local individual who was deported when he went into ICE to try to get his paperwork sorted out because they never thought it would happen to him. In some of the most conservative rural areas of Iowa, I have seen communities that embraced immigration grow, and it's why part of my plan for revitalizing the economies of rural America includes community renewal visas that would allow cities and towns and counties that are hurting not only for jobs but for population to embrace immigration as we have in my city. You know, the only reason
So he's going to put all the
South Bend is
illegals
growing
in
right
cities
now,
that need
after
people
years
like
of
his
shrinking,
because he
is
has a small
immigration.
city.
No,
It's
I
one
just
of the
heard he's going to
reasons
put the
we
illegals
acted,
in
not
conservative
waiting for
places and
Washington
flip them.
to create city-issued
That's
municipal
what the
IDs
real
so that
plan
people,
is.
regardless of immigration status, in our city had the opportunity to have the benefits of identification. We have an opportunity to actually get something done, but we cannot allow this to continue to be the same debate with the same arguments and the same clever lines, often among the same people, since the last real reform happened in the 1980s. We have to actually engage the American majority around the opportunities for not just growth in small communities, but our values, values of welcome, values of faith that all argue for us to manage this humanely and in a way that marries our values with our laws.
Congresista Beto O'Rourke, una pregunta para usted.
What do you say?
In an interview
Congressman
8 months
O'Rourke,
ago, you were
question
asked
for you.
what to do with the so-called overstayers, people who come with a visa and then stay. And you said,
you gonna talk
I don't
Spanish?
know.
I
you have
hope.
an answer now?
I do, and if you read the rest of that article in the Washington Post, I talked about harmonizing our entry-exit system with Mexico in the same way that we do with Canada. I think that could help us to keep a handle on visa overstays, but I think the larger question that we're trying to get at is how do we rewrite this country's immigration laws in our own image, in the image of Houston, Texas, the most diverse city in the United States of America, in the image of El Paso, Texas, one of the safest cities in the United States of America. Safe not despite the fact that we are a city of immigrants, safe because we are a city of immigrants. Conocemos que si queremos asegurar nuestras comunidades y nuestro país, necesitamos tratar cada persona con respeto y dignidad. I will lead an effort to make sure that we rewrite our
If we're
immigration
going to make our
laws
community what it
in
is,
that way.
we all
Never
have to respect
cage
each other,
another
essentially.
child. Make sure that there is accountability and justice for the 7 lives lost under our care and our custody, but also face the fact that Democrats and Republicans alike voted to build a wall that has produced thousands of deaths of people trying to cross to join family or
should
to
be
work
coming
a job.
over.
That we have been part of deporting people, hundreds of thousands, just in the Obama administration alone, who posed no threat to this country, breaking up their families. Democrats have to get off the back foot. We have to lead on this issue because we know it is right. Legalize America. Begin with those more than 1 million dreamers. Make them U.S. citizens right now in their true home country, and extend that to their parents, their sisters, and their brothers, and ensure that we have a legal, safe, orderly system to come to this country and add to our greatness here.
Thank you, George.
Jorge, thank you. We're going to take a quick break. When we come back,
Thank
national
God.
security, foreign policy, the impact on American jobs and U.S. troops.
All right, guys. So they are in a break at the ABC debate in Houston, Texas. I have joining me John Machiko, Jarris Jackson. Well, we're going to get back to the debate, and we appreciate you guys watching on local television 32.3 and especially on Facebook Live. I'll give you my quick thoughts. Jorge Ramos, began it with Latinx, so now you can't call Latinos, you can't say Latino anymore. So yeah.
What is the X? Is that the gender neutral thing?
I have no idea. So it kind of started out on a bad foot. He started speaking in Spanish. Here's the reality. You have candidates that are saying the exact same thing. There's really nothing different that I've heard besides one or two things. And the lower polling candidates are going straight after who?
Trump. It's a trend that we all notice. The lower you are, the more you talk about Trump.
Straight after Trump. Pocahontas, she's, I believe who's had a very good debate so far is Joe Biden.
Joe
Biden.
So it's what we said, John. He seems more forceful.
Yeah.
And I think maybe he was
He's got
listening
more
to
pep.
us. He's got more advice. He came out swinging.
He had to.
He wasn't waiting to get punched in the face.
He's got one-liners.
So we were talking about that earlier today where we said if he's going to stay defensive and wait to get hit, it's going to be a disaster. He has to come out offensively, and he actually has done that. So I did not expect the fireworks between him and Biden that quickly.
Yeah.
We really thought, I think you were on the same page with me, that Warren and Bernie were going to be teaming up against Biden, and maybe Kamala Harris jump on that train. But he didn't wait for that. He went after that.
I mean, the main three. I mean, they had a few moments early, and maybe now that we're going to go to foreign policy and what is it? Foreign policy and American jobs. Maybe they're going to come back to the forefront. But it kind of the top three have kind of been afterthoughts, at least for the last couple of minutes.
Who's had the worst moment? Beto
Klobuchar.
I don't know. Kamala's had a lot of moments she's prepared for, and they just came off terrible.
Absolutely
that
awful.
whole change thing, Joe.
Yeah, no,
instead of
has
saying
come
what
off,
we can't as a black woman,
she's done.
Why don't we say yes we can?
She's done. And Beto surprised me. He's actually come off, for him, has come off better than I anticipated.
I agree with that too about Beto.
It's his home. He's in his hometown.
And what's up with the constant? Is that all I got to do to get praise from Democrats? Go on CNN and curse?
Yep, exactly.
Yeah, how can they be praising him?
I believe he paid for the funerals as well. I think he did.
So he bought votes. Kind of like what Andrew Yang did at the very beginning.
What they're all doing. They're all doing that on health care. I mean, they're all doing that on every facet.
Well, at least bring that up that he paid for some funerals.
Yeah, that's essentially what he did. The big issue in the beginning was Medicare. Do you feel like any of them actually broke out? And are we any further knowing?
And you want to know something? Here's some advice for breaking out. Come up with actually give damn details. Then maybe you can break out.
Yeah.
You're not going to break out with these empty platitudes about how we want to give healthcare to everybody and la-di-da-di-da.
That was my exact problem as well, is that I heard a bunch of I want to do this and that, but nobody had a plan for any of it. None of it. I side with him, but I would change some things. What things? Not a clue.
If you notice,
Remember Pete?
Yeah.
We're going to fix the police. How? Next candidate, please.
Yeah. No, they don't give you specifics. It's all when they get the mic. It's all emotionality.
Yeah.
It's emotionality. I spoke to someone. I saw something at a Denny's.
I met a black mother once.
I met a black mother that one time I was in southern New Hampshire. You know what I mean? And then they go into we hate Trump. And then let me give you
if they're
let me give you
low.
10 seconds of just vagueness, and there goes my time.
The best part of the healthcare moment was Bernie and Biden going at it and arguing about, and Castro, I guess, got in there too, about we're 10 million left off or we're 10 million put on, and can everybody be in it? The one thing that's always bothersome to me is that when they talk about Obamacare type stuff, it didn't work the first time. And you're not giving me a plan as to why it would work the second time. And you're not going to have a bunch of healthy 18-year-olds going into putting money into a system that doesn't benefit them. You're counting on it. It didn't happen the first time, and you're not going to force them to do it the second time. You're going to run into the same problem. It's clearly nonsense.
It didn't work the first time.
You know what
and I'm not interested on your answer, which is just double down on stupid, practically.
Yes. You know what I've noticed, though, with these candidates is they have, except Bernie Sanders, they have all shifted since debate one. They're starting to take the pulse of America and saying, wait a minute, remember unions? Yeah, they kind of negotiated their health care. All right, let's tweak it. Unions, you get to keep what you guys want.
Well,
So they're kind of taking the pulse of the American people and then adjusting their policies is what I'm saying.
The other thing that we've noticed is they've tried to go back to loving Barack Hussein Obama after tarnishing his legacy in the last.
It sickened me.
Yeah.
Which is funny because the last time around, they almost sounded like Republicans trashing Obama and Obamacare. But now they're trying to fix that. No, don't worry. We love
You know
Barack.
what I think the DNC did? Because there's been more Trump bashing this early on in the debate. And like you said, it's been pretty favorable to President Obama.
Because they bashed him the second.
The DNC was like, hey, guys, let's just hold on.
What the hell are you doing?
Yeah, like stop,
bashing
guys.
Obama at our debate.
You don't do that.
Yeah.
So
the line of the night regarding health care was Bernie saying, let us be clear, Joe. How would you say it with your Bernie impersonation? Let us be clear, Joe.
Let us be clear.
So,
no, I think the best line on healthcare was Andrew Yang saying, I know a lot of doctors because they're Asian.
Yeah.
All right, here we're coming back to the debate.
By the way,
one last comment?
Well, no, just the fact that if Medicare is going to be your principal policy, you're not going to have any doctors anymore because they don't reimburse doctors. And going to school to be a doctor costs way too much. Our brightest minds are not going to be in medicine.
Here we go.
And Biden currently leading with the speaking time, speaking for a total of 10 minutes. And the last, Andrew Yang at 3 minutes, 6 seconds.
With you.
Here it goes.
Would you repeal the tariffs on your first day in office? And if so, would you risk losing leverage in our trade relationship with China?
I would not repeal the tariffs on day one, but I would let the Chinese know that we need to hammer out a deal. Because right now, the tariffs are pummeling producers and farmers in Iowa who have absolutely nothing to do with the imbalances that we have with China. A CEO friend of mine was in China recently, and he said that he saw pirated U.S. intellectual property on worker workstations to the tune of thousands of dollars per head. And he said, one, how can my workers compete against that? And two, think about all the lost revenue to American companies. So the imbalances are real, but we have to let the Chinese know that we recognize that President Trump has pursued an arbitrary and haphazard trade policy that has had victims on both sides. So no to repealing the tariffs immediately, but yes to making sure we come to a deal that addresses the concerns of American companies and American producers.
Because President doesn't want to do that.
Yeah, exactly.
Let me
because
take that
China's
question
just
because
so good
you've
on
seen
their work.
President
Well,
Trump
he's Asian,
he
so he
says what's going to happen here is the Chinese are just going to wait him out so they can get a Democrat who they can take advantage of. How do you think about China? We've seen President Trump call President Xi both an enemy and a friend.
Well, the president clearly has no strategy.
Oh, no.
You know, when I first got into this race, I remember President Trump scoffed and said he'd like to see me making a deal with Xi Jinping. I'd like to see him making a deal with Xi Jinping. Is it just me, or was that supposed to happen in, like, April? It's one more example of a commitment not made. When that
It's an example of how easy he thinks the world problems are.
Xi would walk all
Not
over
just
him.
our competitors, our adversaries, but also our allies take note of the inability of the United States to keep its word or follow through on
Trump
its
has
plan.
kept his word
And when that
like
happens, there are
nobody else.
serious consequences.
Harris?
We saw it at the G7. The leaders of some of the greatest powers and economies of the world sitting to talk about one of the greatest challenges in the world, climate change. And there was literally an empty chair where American leadership could have been. The problem is, this is a moment when American leadership is needed more than ever. Whether it's in Hong Kong, where those protesters for democracy need to know that they have a friend in the United States.
Yeah, that's going to ruin your
or
China
anywhere around the world where
negotiation,
increasingly
buddy.
we see dictators throwing their weight around. The world needs America, but it can't be just any America.
Would you repeal?
It has to be Pizza America.
Yeah.
I would have
What a
a
joke.
strategy that would include the
What
tariffs
is it?
as leverage, but it's not about the tariffs. Look, what's going on right now is a president who has reduced the entire China challenge into a question of tariffs, when what we know is that the tariffs are coming down on us more than anybody else, and there's a lack of a bigger strategy.
Like China's not getting hurt at all.
You hit him in
What
the
an
pocketbook.
idiot.
You hit it in money. That's all the Chinese care about.
What we've got right now, though, George, it's not a focused tariff on steel. What he has done here, he has assessed these tariffs on our allies. He has put us in the middle of this trade war, and he is treating our farmers and our workers like poker chips in one of his bankrupt casinos. And if we are not careful, he is going to bankrupt this country. One forecast recently says that it has already cost us 300,000 jobs. All right? There is soybeans that are mounting up in
How many
bins
jobs they
all over
created?
the Midwest,
We
in
have
my
the
state of
lowest
Minnesota,
unemployment in, like,
and
the
in
history of
Iowa.
our country.
So what I think we need to do is to go back to the negotiating table. That's what I would do.
Oh,
I wouldn't
yeah.
have put all these tariffs in place,
And
I
give in
wouldn't
to the
have had a
Chinese.
trade policy where on August 1st he announces he's going to have tariffs on $300 billion of goods. On August 13th he cuts it in half. A week later he says he's going to reduce taxes. The day after that he says he's going to do it. The leaders of the world are watching this.
They
and
are
it
all afraid of
undermines our
China,
strength
and they're
as a
afraid of the
nation.
world leaders.
And yes, we want fair
Everybody
trade,
on the stage.
but we must work with the rest of the world.
That's why none of
and
these
he has
people can
made a
lead.
mockery
Exactly.
of focused trade policy, which I think means enforcement, like we've done in northern Minnesota, passing bills, getting President Obama to do more on that, so that our
It's like
workers
nobody
can
in
benefit.
northern Minnesota,
so we
sweetheart.
are importing, exporting goods, and making sure that is a
Anybody on that
competitive policy.
stage, if they get elected,
where
are going to go
our
on an
goal
apology
is
tour.
that we are making things,
that worked so well
inventing
the first
things,
time.
and exporting to the world. He is defeating that goal.
Secretary Castro, you actually in one of the previous debates identified China as the most serious national security threat to our country. I want to pick up on what Senator Klobuchar was saying, though. She said she'd go back to the negotiating table. The question is, what do you do for leverage? Where do you get it?
Well, look, I agree with those who have said that this erratic, haphazard trade war is hurting American families. As Senator Klobuchar said, 300,000 American jobs. It's estimated that it's cost $600 to the average American family. Just a couple of days ago, 60% of Americans said that they believe that we're in for a recession next year. So,
like they know.
when I become president, I would immediately begin to negotiate with China to ratchet down that trade war. We have leverage there.
So just let them steal $500 billion a year.
We need to return to a leader when it comes to things like human rights. We have
yeah, you're going to tell the
millions
Chinese
of
that.
leaders, for instance, in China, that right now are being imprisoned and mistreated. And in North Korea, this president is elevating a dictator. We need to stop that. We need to return to ensuring that America leads again on human rights. When it comes to this trade war, I would immediately begin ratcheting that trade war down.
Where does abortion stand with their human rights? I'm just curious.
Senator Warren, let me bring
These
you in on
guys are
this
failing
conversation. President
miserably when it
Obama
comes
signed
to
the
this.
Trans-Pacific Partnership. In part, it was designed to rein in China, to bring China in to some kind of regulation.
see.
What
We
do
need
you
to
think
reframe the
he got
question.
wrong?
Yes.
So our trade policy in America has been broken for decades. And it has been broken because it works for giant multinational corporations and not for much of anyone else. These are giant corporations that, shoot, if they can save a nickel by moving a job to a foreign country, they'll do it in a heartbeat. And yet, for decades now, who's been whispering in the ears of our trade negotiators? Who has shaped our trade policy? It's been the giant corporations. It's been their lobbyists and their executives.
Aren't they moving back?
The way we change our trade
Exactly.
policy in America is first.
None of the-
procedures.
not one of these
Who
is doing a
sits
good
at
job
the
with this.
table? I want to negotiate trade with unions at the table. I want to negotiate.
She's gonna
it
take
with
the unions
small
to China
farmers
with her.
At the table. I want to negotiate it with
And talk about the human rights
environmentalists at
and
the
climate
table.
change.
I
Yeah.
want to negotiate with
China's
human
gonna
rights
laugh.
activists at the table. And you asked the question about leverage. If I can just respond to that one, the leverage? Are you kidding? Everybody wants access to the American market. That means that we have the capacity to say right here in America, you want to come sell goods to American
That's what Trump is doing,
consumers,
sweetheart.
Then you've got to raise your standards. You've got to raise your labor standards.
Exactly what
You've got to
Donald
raise
Trump
your
is doing.
environmental standards.
Pocahontas.
So our companies
You're
can
poking
compete
nonsense.
Yes.
on a
Oh
level
my
playing
gosh.
field. We can use trade not to undermine American workers and not to undermine American farms and not to undermine small businesses in this country.
Oh my
We can
gosh.
use trade
What an
to
idiot.
help build a stronger economy.
Senator Harris, how would your trade policy differ from President Obama's?
Well, first of all, I have no criticism of that more than just looking at where we are now, which is that we've got a guy in the White House who has been erratic on trade policy. He conducts trade policy by tweet, frankly, born out of his fragile ego. It has resulted in farmers in Iowa with soybeans rotting in bins, looking at bankruptcy. When we look at this issue, my trade policy under a Harris administration is always going to be about saying we need to export American products, not American jobs. And to do that, we have to have a meaningful trade policy. I am not a
Moron.
protectionist Democrat. Look, we
Sweetheart,
need to
China's
sell our
flooding the
stuff.
market. They're not gonna
And
want our
that means
stuff.
we need to sell it to people overseas. That means we need trade policies that
hold
allow
exporting.
that to happen. You asked earlier about China. It's a complicated relationship. We have to hold China accountable. They steal our products, including our intellectual property. They dump
Agree there.
substandard
How do you
products
keep them
into our
accountable?
economy. They need to be held accountable.
How?
We also need to partner with China
What's the
on
one thing Trump
climate
is
and the
doing?
crisis that
Trump is
presents.
keeping them
We need
accountable.
to
They
partner
can't
with
come out and
China
say what
on the
Trump's
issue
doing
of
is
North Korea. I am on, and I think the only person on this stage, the Senate Intelligence Committee and the Senate Homeland Security Committee. We need a partner on the issue of North Korea. But the bottom line is this: Donald Trump, in office on trade policy, you know, he reminds me of that guy in The Wizard of Oz. You know, when you pull back the curtain, it's a really small dude.
Called the Wizard.
Okay.
Dude, George. Okay.
I'm not even going to take the bait, Senator Harris, but
She's
I am
having a
going to take
miserable night.
That wasn't about you.
Oh, she's having.
Senator Sanders right now.
She is done.
There is a reason
Here we go. Those corporations.
in the last 45 years, the average American today, despite an explosion of technology and worker productivity, is not making a penny more than he or she made 45 years ago. And one of the reasons is that for decades we have had disastrous trade policies. And I got to say to my good friend Joe Biden, Joe and I strongly disagree on trade. I helped lead the opposition to NAFTA and PNTR, which cost this country over 4 million good-paying jobs. And what happened is people who had those jobs ended up getting other jobs, making 50% of what they made in manufacturing. So Trump obviously hasn't a clue. Trump thinks that trade policy is a tweet at 3 o'clock in the morning. What we have got to do is develop a trade policy that represents workers, represents the farmers in the Midwest and elsewhere who are losing billions right now because of Trump's policy. A trade policy which understands that if a company shuts down in America and goes abroad and then thinks they're going to get online to get a lucrative federal contract under Bernie Sanders, they got another guess coming.
Vice President Biden, invoke your name.
Yeah. Well, look, we're either going to make the policy or China's going to make the rules of the road. We make up 25% of the world economy. We need another 25% to join us. And I think Senator Warren is correct. At the table has to be labor, and at the table have to be environmentalists. The fact of the matter is, China, the problem isn't the trade deficit. The problem is they're stealing our intellectual property. The problem is they're violating the WTO. They're dumping steel on us. That's a different issue than whether or not they're dumping agricultural products on us. In addition to that, we're in a position where if we don't set the rules, we, in fact, are going to find ourselves with China
What does he
setting
think
the
Trump
rules.
is doing?
And
He's
that's why
setting
we
the
need to
rules.
organize the world to take on China to stop the corrupt practices that are underway.
Senator Booker, close out this round.
Sure. There's one point we're really missing on the stage right now, which is the fact that Donald Trump's America First policy is actually an America isolated, an America alone policy.
Exactly.
From trade to battling China to the global crisis of climate change, the challenges in the Middle East, he is pulling us away from our allies, out of the Iran deal, out of the Paris Climate Accords. And on trade, he's deciding to take on China while at the same time taking on tariff battles with all of our allies. You literally have him using a national security waiver to put tariffs on Canada. Now, look, I'm the only person on the stage that finds Trudeau's hair very menacing, but they are not a national security threat. We cannot go up against China alone. This is a president that has a better relationship with dictators like Duterte and Putin than he does with Merkel and Macron. We are the strongest nation on the planet Earth, and our strength is multiplied and magnified when we stand with our allies in common cause and common purpose. That's how we beat China. That's how we beat climate change on the planet Earth, and that's how American values are the ones that lead on issues of trade and workers' rights.
David.
George, thank you. I want to turn now to our troops overseas and to America's longest war in Afghanistan. U.S. talks with the Taliban are dead, according to the president. Secret talks at Camp David have been canceled before they could happen. Many of you have weighed in on that already. So I want to move past that tonight to what all of you have promised on the campaign trail. Many of you on this stage have said you'd bring the troops home in your first term. Others have said in your first year. Senator Warren, we all know the presidency is much different from the campaign trail. President Obama wanted to bring the troops home. President Trump promised to bring the troops home, and you have said of Afghanistan, let's help them reach a peace settlement. It is time to bring our troops home, in your words, starting right now. Would you keep that promise to bring the troops home starting right now with no deal with the Taliban?
Yes, and I'll tell you why. What we're doing right now in Afghanistan is not helping the safety and security of the United States. It is not helping the safety and security of the world. It is not helping the safety and security of Afghanistan.
Wrong.
We need to bring our troops home. And then we need to make a big shift. We cannot ask our military to keep solving problems that cannot be solved militarily. We're not going to bomb our way to a solution in Afghanistan. We need to treat the problem of terrorism as a worldwide problem. And that means we need to be working with all of our allies, our European allies, our Canadian allies, our Asian allies, our allies in Africa and in South America. We need to work together to root out terrorism. It means using all of our tools. It means economic investment. It means expanding our diplomatic efforts instead of hollowing out the State Department and deliberately making it so we have no eyes and ears in many of these countries. We need a foreign policy that is about our security and about leading on our values.
Senator Warren, a quick follow on that, because top U.S. leaders, military leaders on the ground in Afghanistan told me you can't do it without a deal with the Taliban. You just said you would. You would bring them home. What if they told you that? Would you listen to their advice?
I was in Afghanistan with John McCain 2 years ago this past summer. I think
Lot
it
of
may
love
have
for
been
John
Senator
McCain
McCain's
tonight.
last trip before he was sick. And I talked to people. We did. We talked to military leaders, American and local leaders. We talked to people on the ground and asked the question, the same one I asked on the Senate Armed Services Committee, every time one of the generals comes through.
No.
Show me what winning looks like. Tell me what it looks like. And what you hear is
Warren,
a lot of
bring all the troops back from Afghanistan without a deal.
Because Trump doesn't want to do that.
Describe it. And the reason no one can describe it is because the problems in Afghanistan are not problems that can be solved by a military. I have 3 older brothers who all served in the military. I understand firsthand the kind of commitment they have made. They will do anything we ask them to do. But we cannot ask them to solve problems that they alone cannot solve. We need to work with the rest of the world. We need to use our economic tools. We need to use our diplomatic tools. We need to build with our allies.
American
and
forces
we
can
need
solve
to
it.
make the whole world safer, not keep troops bombing in Afghanistan.
Senator Warren, thank you.
She does.
I do want to stay on this, and I want
She
to
has
turn
no
to Mayor
clue.
Buttigieg, because you're the only
Tulsi would
veteran
have
on
eaten
the
her
stage
alive.
who served in Afghanistan. We heard in recent days from General Joseph Dunford, the chair of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, who said in recent days, I'm not going to use the word withdrawal right now. It's our judgment the Afghans need support.
He's not
going to
say withdrawal. How much you want to bet?
If he's not even using the word withdrawal,
How much
would
you want to bet?
put your promise to bring troops home in the first year on hold to follow the advice?
You know, I served under General Dunford, way under General Dunford in Afghanistan. And today, September 12th, 2019, means that today you could be 18 years old enough to serve, and have not been alive on 9/11. We have got to put an end to endless war. And the way we do it is see to it that that country will never again be used for an attack against our homeland, and that does not require an open-ended commitment of ground troops. Let me say something else, because if there's one thing we've learned about Afghanistan, from Afghanistan, it's that the best way not to be caught up in endless war is to avoid starting one in the first place. And so when I am president, an authorization for the use of military force will have a built-in 3-year sunset. Congress will be required to vote, and a president will be required to go to Congress to seek an authorization. Because if our troops can summon the courage to go overseas,
So the enemy's
the
going to wait
least our
3 years
members
and
of
then come
Congress
back.
should be able to do
More.
is summon the courage to take a vote on whether they ought to be there. By the way, we also have a president right now who seems to treat troops as props, or worse, tools for his own enrichment. We saw what's going on with flights apparently being routed through Scotland just so people can stay at his hotels. I'll tell you, as a military officer, the very first thing that goes through your mind, the first time you ever make eye contact with somebody that you are responsible for in uniform, is do not let these men and women down. This president is doing exactly that. I will not.
Mayor Buttigieg, thank you.
Never answered the question about withdrawal. Notice.
Any possible vacuum being created in Afghanistan if you pull the U.S. troops out has been heightened by what we've seen in recent days on the ground in Iraq. When you were vice president, President Obama turned to you to bring the troops home from Iraq. You have said on the campaign trail, quote, "I made sure the president turned to me and said, Joe, get our combat troops out of Iraq." There was a major drawdown of U.S. troops, and then ISIS seized, by some estimates, 40% of the territory in Iraq. You then had to send thousands of troops back in. Was it wrong to pull out of Iraq that quickly, and did the move actually help ISIS take hold?
No, it wasn't wrong to pull up. But I want to answer the Afghanistan question. I've been in and out of Afghanistan, not with a gun, and I admire my friend for his service. But I've been out of Afghanistan, I think, more than anybody on this, and it's an open secret. You reported a long time ago, George, that I was opposed to the surge in Afghanistan. The whole purpose of going to Afghanistan was to not have a counterinsurgency, meaning that we're going to put that country together. It cannot be put together. Let me say it again. It will not be put together. It's 3 different countries. Pakistan owns the 3 counties, the 3 provinces, and the East. They're not any part of it. The Connies run it. I will go on and on, but here's the point. The point is that it's a counter-terrorism strategy. We can prevent the United States from being the victim of terror coming out of Afghanistan by providing for bases, insist that Pakistanis provide bases for us to airlift from and to move against what we know. We don't need those troops there. I would bring them home. And Joe Dunford's a fine guy, but this has been an internal argument we've had for 8 years. With regard to Iraq, the fact of the matter is that, I should have never voted to give Bush the authority to go in and do what he said he was going to do. The AUMF was designed, he said, to go in and get the Security Council to vote 15-0 to allow inspectors to go in to determine whether or not anything was being done with chemical weapons or nuclear weapons. And when that happened, he went ahead and went anyway without any of that proof. I said something that was not meant the way I said it. I said from that point on, what I was argued against in the beginning, once he started to put the troops in, was that, in fact, we were doing it the wrong way. There was no plan. We should not be engaged. We didn't have the people with us. We didn't have our alliance. We didn't have allies with us, et cetera. And it was later, when we came into office, the president turned to me and said, Joe, when they said we had a plan to get out, he turned to the whole security and said, Joe will organize this, get the troops home. My son spent a year in Iraq, and I understand. And we were right to get the combat troops out. The big mistake that was made, which we predicted, was that you would not have a circumstance where the Shia and the Kurds would work together to keep ISIS from moving in.
Mr. Vice President, thank you. I want to turn to Senator Sanders on this because the concern over Afghanistan is very similar to what we saw in Iraq when the troops came out. ISIS filled that vacuum. What do you make of people out there who are worried that if we pull out U.S. troops too quickly from Afghanistan, it will create safe haven all over again, like the plotters of 9/11?
David, let me answer that, but let me just comment on something that the Vice President said. You talked about the big mistake.
I was the only one that didn't vote for it.
The truth is, the big mistake, the huge mistake, and one of the big differences between you and me, I never believed what Cheney and Bush said about Iraq. I voted against the war in Iraq and helped lead the opposition. And it's sad to say, I kind of, had the feeling that there would be massive destabilization in that area if we went into that war. As the former chairman of the Senate Committee on Veterans Affairs, I want to pick up on what Pete said. We cannot express our gratitude to all of the men and women who have put their lives on the line to defend us, who have responded to the call of duty. But I think also I am the only person up here to have voted against all 3 of Trump's military budgets. I don't think we
giving more money to our military. Let's be clear.
$1 billion a year on the military. when we don't even know who our enemy is.
Wow.
I think that what we have got to do is bring this world together. Bring it together on climate change. Bring it together in fighting against terrorism. And make it clear that we as a planet, as a global community, will work together to help countries around the world rebuild their struggling economies.
How are we going to have money for
to rid the world
everything?
of terrorism?
We're going to pay for that.
We're going to build
Dropping
economies
bombs
up.
on Afghanistan and Iraq was not the way to do it.
Senator Sanders, thank you. I want to take this to Mr. Yang. You share the stage, as you know, when we talk about troops in Iraq and Afghanistan with the Vice President.
He tries to make a business connection on this question.
With senators who are on the Senate Armed Services, the Foreign Relations Committees, with an Afghanistan veteran who is on the stage tonight. As you share the stage with these candidates, what makes you the most qualified on this stage to be Commander-in-Chief?
I've signed a pledge to end the forever wars. We've been in a state of continuous armed conflict for 18 years, which is not what the American people want. We have to start owning what we can and can't do. We're not very good at rebuilding countries, and if you want proof, all you have to do is look within our own country at Puerto Rico. We've spent trillions of dollars to unclear benefits, lost thousands of lives, and thank you, Pete, for your service. And the goal has to be to rebuild the relationships that have made America strong for decades. I would lead our armed forces with restraint and judgment. What the American people want is simply a president who has the right values and point of view, and they can trust to make the right decisions when it comes to putting our young men and women into harm's way.
He's so
and that's what I would do as president.
So uncomfortable.
Mr. Yang, thank you. Jorge?
Thank you very much. Vamos a hablar de América Latina. You haven't been asked about Latin America in the previous debate, so
yeah, let's do that.
Begin.
Talk about Venezuela.
Senator Sanders, one country where many immigrants are arriving from is Venezuela. A recent UN fact-finding mission found that thousands have been disappeared, tortured, and killed by government forces in Venezuela. You admit that Venezuela does not have free elections, but still you refuse to call Nicolás Maduro un dictador, a dictator. Can you explain why, and what are the main differences between your kind of socialism
Good question.
and the one being imposed in Venezuela,
Democratic
Cuba,
socialism,
and Nicaragua?
Let's go.
Well, first of all, let me be very clear. Anybody who does what Maduro does is a vicious tyrant. What we need now is international and regional cooperation for free elections in Venezuela so that the people of that country can make and can create their own future.
And no
in terms
country
of
stepping
democratic
in.
socialism, to equate what goes on in Venezuela with what I believe is extremely unfair. I'll tell you what I believe in terms of democratic socialism. I agree with what goes on in Canada and in Scandinavia, guaranteeing health care to all people as a human right.
As of 2011, he agreed with Venezuela.
The United States should not be the only major country on earth not to provide paid family
He's
and medical
shifting.
leave.
There he goes.
Shifting
I believe that every
hugely.
worker in this country deserves a living wage and that we expand
Jorge,
the trade
come on, get him
union
back on track,
movement.
buddy. Come
I
on.
happen to believe also that what, to me, democratic socialism means is we deal with an issue we do not discuss enough, Jorge, not in the media and not in Congress. You got 3 people in America owning more wealth than the bottom half of this country.
What's this
You
got
got a
to do with
handful of
balance?
billionaires
Oh my God.
controlling what goes on in Wall Street, the insurance companies, and in the media. Maybe, just maybe, what we should be doing is creating an
Thank you.
economy that works for all of us, not 1%.
Come on,
That's my
Jorge.
understanding of
Jorge,
democratic
do your
socialism.
job.
Secretary Garcia, you wanted to say a quick response, 45 seconds.
Sure, thank you, Jorge. I'll call Maduro a dictator because he is a dictator. And
So courageous.
Doesn't get a lot
what
of
we need
applause
to do
either in
is
that
to,
room.
along with our allies, make sure that the Venezuelan people get the assistance that they need, that we continue to pressure Venezuela so that they'll have free and fair elections, and also here in the United States, offer temporary protected status, TPS, to Venezuelans.
Oh, bring him in.
That is something that the
Bring 'em
Trump
in.
administration has failed to do for all of his big talk.
Bring 'em in, they'll
about
become
supporting the
Republicans.
Venezuelan,
Look at Florida.
American community.
The
He
Cubans.
has failed. I will not. I also believe that we need to do things like a 20 21st Century Marshall Plan for Honduras, El Salvador, and Guatemala, so that people can find safety and opportunity at home instead of having to make the dangerous journey to the United States. And under my administration, we're going to put renewed focus on Latin America. It makes sense.
Latin America.
They're our neighbors, and we have a lot of things in common. It also makes sense that because we have a country like China that is going around the world to places like Africa and Latin America, making their own relationships, strengthening those. The United States needs to strengthen its partnerships in Latin America immediately.
Thank you, sir.
And I will.
Senator Booker, let me ask you about Brazil. After the recent fires in the Amazon, some experts suggested that eating less meat is one way to help the environment.
Some experts.
You are a vegan since
AOC's an
2014.
expert.
That's obviously a personal choice. But President Trump and Brazil's President Bolsonaro are concerned that climate change regulations could affect economic growth. So should more Americans, including those here in Texas and in Iowa, follow your diet?
First of all, I want to say no. Actually, I want to translate that into Spanish. No.
Nailed it this time. Yeah. I'll give him that.
Look, let's just be clear. The factory farming going on that's assaulting this corporate consolidation in the agriculture industry, one of the reasons why I have a bill to put a moratorium on this kind of corporate consolidation is because this factory farming is destroying and hurting our environment, and you see independent family farmers being pushed out of business because of the kind of incentives we are giving that don't line up with our values. That's what I'm calling for. But I want to switch because we don't have a crowded debate stage. We were talking about Afghanistan and Iraq. It annoys me that we had a conversation about our troops overseas and we didn't say one word about veterans in our country. We have a shameful reality in America that we send people off to war and they often come home with invisible wounds, hurts, and harms. They're disproportionately homeless. You hear stories about women waiting for months for gynecological care through the VA. It is very important that as a country, understand that we are not going to solve every problem with this outrageous increased militarism, that we also make sure that we stand up for the people that stood for us. We end our national anthem with Home of the Brave. It's about time we make this a better home for our bravest.
Congressman O'Rourke, Hurricane Harvey hit this town 2 years ago, and not only is the Amazon burning, Greenland is melting at a record pace. The last 5 years have been the hottest ever recorded.
Greenland, folks.
And we have a viewer's question about this. What meaningful
Boardwalk on
action
Monopoly.
will you take to reverse the effect of climate change? And can we count on you to follow through if your donors are against it?
Yes, we will follow through regardless of the political consequences or who it offends, because this is the very future of our planet and our ability for our children and grandchildren to be able to survive on it. We will make sure that we get to net zero greenhouse gas emissions no later than the year 2050, that we are halfway there by 2030, that we mobilize $5 trillion over the next 10 years to do that, that we invest here in Houston, Texas with pre-disaster mitigation grants to protect those communities that are vulnerable to flooding, given the fact that this town has seen 3 500-year floods in just 5 years. You'd like to think you're good for 1,500 years, but you're not. They're coming faster and larger and more devastating than ever. We're also going to make sure that we free ourselves from a dependence on fossil fuels and embrace renewable wind and solar energy technology, as well as the high-paying, high-skill, high-wage jobs that come along with that. And then we're going to pay farmers for the environmental services that they want to provide, planting cover crops, keeping more land under conservation, using no-till farming. Regenerative agriculture can pull carbon out of the air and can drive it and sequester it into the soil. That's the way that we're going to meet this challenge, and we're going to bring everyone into the solution.
So they're going to tell the farmers how to farm. Let's be clear. Let's be very clear.
He's Beto. He knows.
Senator Klobuchar.
Thank you. This is the existential crisis of our time. It's, that movie, The Day After Tomorrow.
Bring that up
it's
again?
Today. We have seen a warming in our world like never before.
Today.
We're seeing flooding in the Midwest, flooding in Houston, fires in the West. And I think having someone leading the ticket from the Midwest will allow us to talk about this in a different way and get it done. On day one, I will get us back into the International Climate Change Agreement. On day two, I will bring back the clean power rules that President Obama had worked on. On day 3, I will bring back the gas mileage standards. You can do all that without Congress, which is good. On day 4, 5, and 6, I will, working with Congress and mayors and business people all over the country, introduce sweeping legislation to get at that 2050 goal. And on day 7, you're supposed to rest, but I won't.
Senator,
this is what we need to do if we're going to get climate change. We have to take this on as a crisis that's happening right now.
Senator Warren, should American foreign policy be based around the principle of climate change?
Yes. We need to work on every front on climate change. It is the threat to every living thing on this planet, and we are running out of time.
No,
every
you guys
time
are
the
the
scientists
threat to
go
every
back, they
living
say
thing.
we have less and less time than we thought we had. But that means we've got to use all the tools. One of the tools we need to use are our regulatory tools. I have proposed, following Governor Inslee, that we, by 2028, cut all carbon emissions from new buildings, by 2030, carbon emissions from cars, and by 2035, all carbon emissions from the manufacture of electricity. That alone, those 3, will cut our emissions here in the United States by 70%. We can do this. We also need to help around the world to clean, but understand this one more time. Why doesn't it happen? As long as Washington is paying more attention to money than it is to our future, we can't make the changes we need to make. We have to attack the corruption head on so that we can save our planet.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds.
When I think about this issue, it really is through the lens of my baby nieces who are 1.5 and 3 years old.
And are black.
When I look at what is going to be the world if we do nothing when they turn 20, I'm really scared. And when I've been in the United States Senate for now the last 2.5 years, and I look at our counterparts, the Republicans in the United States Senate, they must be looking at their children, and then when they look at the mirror, I don't know what they see, but it's a lack of courage. And this is an issue that, yes, it represents an existential threat. It is also something we can do something about. This is a problem that was created by human behaviors. And we can change our behaviors in a way that saves our planet. I've seen it happen in California. I took on, as the Attorney General of California, I ran the second largest Department of Justice in the United States, second only to the United States Department of Justice. I took on the big oil companies, and we saw progress. If any of you have been to Los Angeles 20 years ago, you'll remember that sky was brown.
Still
you
is.
go there now, the sky is blue, and you know why? Because leaders just decided to lead, and we took on these big fossil fuel companies. We have some of the most important and strongest laws in the country, and we made a difference. And my point being, I've done it before, and I will lead as president on this issue because we have no time. The clock is ticking, but we need courage, and we need courageous leadership.
The clock is tipping because that clock doesn't even believe in him.
Mr. Yang.
So to follow up on what Elizabeth said, why are we losing to the fossil fuel companies? Why are we losing to the gun lobby and the NRA? And the answer is this. We all know, everyone on the stage knows, that our government has been overrun by money and corporate interests. Now, everyone here has a plan to try and curb those corporate interests, but we have to face facts. Money finds a way. Money will find its way back in. So what is the answer? The answer is to wash the money out with people
like a drug dealer?
Money. My proposal is that we give every American 100 democracy dollars that you can only give to candidates and causes that you like. This would wash out the lobbyist cash by a factor of 8 to 1. That is the only way we will win. And as someone running for president, I'll tell you, there's a people on one side and the money on the other. The only way for us to win is if we bring them together.
Political food stamps, folks.
Thank you, Mr. Yang. Lindsay.
Democracy dollars.
I'd like to have an academic discussion now about education.
Didn't even have the
Mr.
decency
Yang,
to come
we'll
up with a
stay
good
you.
name either.
Here
That's
in
why
Houston,
that's why I'm the
school
most
district is
offended.
facing yet another year of spending cuts. Like schools across the country, the system faces many challenges. One of them, thousands of students are leaving traditional public schools and going to charter schools. You're the most vocal proponent on this stage for charter schools. You have said that Democrats who want to limit them are, quote, just jumping into bed with teachers' unions and doing kids a disservice. Why isn't taxpayer money better spent on fixing traditional public schools?
Let me be clear, I am pro-good school. I've got a kid, one of my
I got a
boys
kid.
who started public school last week, and I was not there because I was running for president. So we need to pay teachers more because the data clearly shows that a good teacher is worth his or her weight in gold. We need to lighten up the emphasis on standardized tests, which do not measure anything fundamental about our character or human worth. But here's the big
That's something I
one.
can
The
actually
data
agree
clearly
with.
shows that 65
Come on,
to 70% of our students' outcomes are
Getting rid of
determined
standardized
outside of the
tests?
school.
Because he wants
We're talking
external,
about
like,
time spent
you're
at
black,
home with
I'm
the
brown, we
parents,
get more points.
words read to
Urban
them when
community.
you
that's what
Yeah,
it
that's
is.
what he
stress
meant.
levels in the house, income, type of neighborhood. We're putting money into schools, and educators know this. We're saying you're 100% responsible for educating our kids, but you can only control 30%. They all know this. The answer is to put money directly into the families and neighborhoods to give our kids a chance to learn and our teachers a chance to teach.
Mayor Buttigieg, 45 seconds to respond.
Step one is appoint a Secretary of Education who actually believes in public education.
Use that in second debate too, just to be clear.
I believe in public education. And in order to strengthen it, some things are very complex for preparing for a future where knowledge is at your fingertips, but we got to teach more to do with critical thinking and social and emotional learning. Some of it is extremely simple. We've just got to pay teachers more. And we've got to lift up the teaching profession. I always think of a story from South Bend of friends who hosted exchange students from Japan. They had a student one year who wanted to be a teacher, and they kept in touch with her when she went back to Japan and to college. She took the exam to try to become a teacher in a society that really regards teachers and compensates teachers well. And she came up just short. So you know what she did? Since she was academically good but couldn't quite make the cut to be a teacher, she had a fallback plan. She became a doctor. That is how seriously some countries treat the teaching profession. If we want to get the results that we expect for our children, we have to support and compensate the teaching profession, respect
Everybody
teachers
wants to throw
the way
money
we do
at everything,
soldiers,
and nobody has money
pay
to
them
throw.
more like the way we do doctors.
Senator Warren, to use Mr. Yang's term, are you just jumping into bed with teachers' unions?
You know, I think I'm the only person on the stage who has been a public school teacher. I've wanted to be a public school teacher since I was in second grade. And let's be clear in all the ways we talk about this, money for public schools should stay in public schools, not go anywhere else. I've already made my commitment. We will have a Secretary of Education who has been a public school teacher. I think this is ultimately about our values. I have proposed a 2-cent wealth tax on the top 1/10 of 1% in this country. That would give us enough money to start with our babies by providing universal child care for every baby age 0 to 5, universal pre-K for every 3-year-old and 4-year-old in this country,
Universal
raise
child
the
care.
wages of every child care worker and preschool teacher in this country, cancel student loan debt for 95% of the folks who've got
And 2 cents, folks. 2 cents.
Thank you,
Good, get us there.
and
2 cents.
strengthen our unions. This is how we build an America that reflects our values, not just where the money comes from with the billionaires and corporate executives.
Senator Harris, 45 seconds to respond.
My first grade teacher, Mrs. Frances Wilson, God
So
rest her soul,
tired of hearing
attended my
stories.
school graduation. I think most of us would say that we are not where we are without the teachers who believed in us. I have offered in this
Myself, I
campaign
studied.
a proposal to deal with this,
not
which
like
will
they
be the
just passed
first in the
me.
nation
Yeah.
federal investment in closing the teacher pay gap, which is $13,500 a year.
That's it?
Because right now in our public schools, our teachers, 94% of them are coming out of their own pocket to help pay for school supplies. And that is wrong. I also want to talk about where we are here at TSU and what it means in terms of HBCUs. I have, as part of my proposal, that we will put $2 trillion into investing in our HBCUs for teachers.
To make more
because-
division,
because-
historically black colleges is what she's talking
Because,
about.
as a
Trump
proud
just said he was
graduate
giving
of
a lot of money to
historically
the
black
HBCUs.
college and university, I will say that it is our HBCUs that disproportionately produce teachers and those who serve in these many professions. But
Thank you,
also,
Senator.
But this is a critical point. If a black child has a black teacher before the end of 3rd grade, they are 13% more likely to go to college. If that child has had 2 black teachers before the end of 3rd grade, they are 32% more likely to go to college.
So not teachers,
so when
black
we talk
teachers.
about
Black teachers.
investing in
Black
our
teachers.
public education system, it is at the source of so much. When we fix it, that will fix so many other things. We must invest in the potential of our children.
Senator
and I
Sanders,
strongly believe
All
you
right.
can judge a
Latinos, white
society
people,
based on how
you can't be
it
teachers.
treats its children, and we are
Thank you,
failing
Senator.
on this issue.
This guy just looks.
Guess what?
What? What?
You're guessing. All right, here's the answer. We are the wealthiest country in the history of the world. And yet we have the highest child poverty rate of almost any country on earth. We have teachers in this country who are leaving education because they can't work 2 or 3 jobs to support themselves, which is why under my legislation, we will move to see that every teacher in America makes at least $60,000 a year. What we
Where is
will
all this
also
money coming
do
from?
You.
is not only have universal pre-K, we will make public colleges and universities and HBCUs debt-free.
You want to pay teachers
And what we will
$60,000 a
also
year, and
do-
those students are paid.
Because this is an incredible burden on millions and millions of young people who did nothing wrong except try to get the education they need. We are going to cancel all student debt in this country.
Thank you, Senator.
And
Thank
we
you,
are
Senator.
going to do that by imposing a tax on Wall Street speculation.
Thank you, Senator. Mr. Vice President, I want to come to you and talk to you about inequality in schools and race. In a
Look, he's laughing.
conversation about
He's
how to
laughing.
deal with segregation in schools back in 1975,
Uh-oh.
you told a reporter, "I don't feel responsible for the sins of my father and grandfather. I feel responsible for what the situation is today, for the sins of my own generation, and I'll be damned if I feel responsible to pay for what happened 300 years ago." You said that some 40 years ago. But as you stand here tonight, what responsibility do you think that Americans need to take to repair the legacy of slavery in our country?
Come on, have the guts.
Well, they
Joe,
have
say
to
it
deal
right
with the look, there is institutional segregation in this country. And from the time I got involved, I started dealing with that. Redlining, banks, making sure that we are in a position where, look, we talk about education. I propose that what we take is those very poor schools, the Title I schools, triple the amount of money we spend from $15 to $45 billion a year. Give every single teacher a raise to the equal raise of getting out the $60,000 level. Number 2, make sure that we bring in to help the teachers deal with the problems that come from home. The problems that come from home, we have 1 school psychologist for every
They're not
1,500
parents.
kids in America today. It's crazy. The teachers are and I'm married to a teacher. My deceased wife is a teacher. They have every problem coming to them. We have to make sure that every single child does, in fact, have 3, 4, and 5-year-olds go to school, not daycare, school. We bring social workers into homes of parents to help them deal with how to raise their children. It's not that they don't want to
That's
help.
the government telling you how to raise your kids. You hear 'em?
Play the
Zero.
radio. Make
Yeah,
sure the
you're right.
television, make sure you have the record player on at night, the phone. Make sure the kids hear words. A kid coming from a very poor school, or a very poor background, will hear 4 million words fewer spoken by the time they get there. There's
Thank you,
so
Mr.
much
Vice
we.
President.
I agree with that.
I'm gonna go like the rest of
Let the
them
kids
do.
listen to
Twice
talk
over,
radio. They'll be
okay?
fine.
Because here's the deal. The deal is that we've got this a little backwards. And by the way, in Venezuela, we should be allowing people to come here from Venezuela. I know Maduro. I've confronted Maduro. Number 2, you talk about the need to do something in Latin America. I'm the guy that came up with $700.
Does he know we're past that question?
Yeah, he doesn't have a
To see to it those 3 countries, in fact, change their system so people don't have a chance to leave. You're all acting like we just discovered this yesterday.
Thank you, Mr.
very
Vice
much.
President. Secretary Castro.
Thank you very much. Well, that's quite a lot. You know, I grew up in one of those neighborhoods that folks have talked about, in a neighborhood that was grappling with the legacy of segregation. In fact, in two public school districts that were involved in a 1973 Supreme Court case challenging how Texas financed its schools. And I know that today, our schools are segregated because our neighborhoods are segregated.
Right.
Now, I have an education plan, like a lot of folks up here, that would pay teachers more, that would recruit diverse ranks of teachers, that would invest in our public schools. But I also believe that we have to connect the dots to uplift the quality of life, to invest in housing opportunity, to invest in job opportunity, to invest in community schools that offer resources like parents able to go back and get their GED, and healthcare opportunities, and those things that truly ensure that the entire family can prosper. Those are the types of things that we need to do, in addition to lifting up our public schools. You asked a second ago about charter schools. Look, it is a myth that charter schools are better than public schools.
No, it's not.
Wow.
No, it's not.
Wow.
Thank you, Secretary.
While I'm not categorically against charter schools, I would require more transparency and accountability from them than is required right now.
So put more red tape on them so they shut down.
It was 65 years ago
he's
this
lied.
year that the Supreme Court outlawed racial segregation in public schools. Yet for millions of students of color today, segregation remains a reality. Non-white districts typically receive $2,200 less per student than those in white districts. This means older books, less access to computers, and often worse outcomes. What is your plan to address segregation? And I'm not just talking about the achievement gap, but I'm talking about the opportunity gap in education.
So I'm hearing a lot of conversations on the
debate,
stage
buddy.
and the way we talk about communities of color. Look, I live in a black and brown community below the poverty line. I've lived in public housing projects almost for a decade and saw the anguish of parents who are just so deeply frustrated that they don't have a school that serves their genius. I think I'm the only person on the stage, even though I had no formal authority as mayor to run a school system, I stepped up and took responsibility for our schools. And we produced results. A lot of folks here talking about raising teacher salary. We actually did it in Newark, New Jersey. And we didn't stop there. We closed poor performing charter schools, but dagnabbit, we expanded high-performing charter schools. We were a city that said we need to find local solutions that work for our community. The results speak for themselves. We're now the #1 city in America for beat the odds schools, from high poverty to high performance. Strategies like investing in our children work. And I'll tell you this, I am tired of us thinking about these problems isolated, disconnected from other issues. That's why my friend Secretary Castro is 100% right. We are in the reality we are right now because, Vice President, of overtly racist policies, not 400 years ago, just in my lifetime, that we're redlining communities, disinvesting in communities. And more than just that, my kids are not only struggling with racial segregation and housing and the challenges of underfunded schools, but they're also struggling with environmental injustice. If you've talked to someone who's a parent of a child who's had permanent brain damage because of lead, you'll know this is a national problem because there's over 3,000 jurisdictions in America where children have more than twice the blood lead levels of Flint, Michigan.
Thank you.
And so if I'm President of the United States, it is a holistic solution to education, from raising teacher salary, fully funded special education, but combating the issues of poverty, combating the issues of racial segregation, combating the issues of a criminal justice system that takes parents away from their kids, and dealing with environmental justice as a major pillar of any climate policy.
Thank you, Lindsey. One final question coming up. We'll be right back.
You're watching the Democrats go at it in Houston, Texas, and we appreciate you watching on local television station 32.3 and everybody on Facebook Live. Jairus Jackson, John Machiko in studio with me. How do you guys think hold on. I do have an inside information. There is start watching the commercials because there is something that should take off in the commercial break, and it's got a local tie. It's a new organization, so just keep watch. When that commercial comes on, I'll let you guys know. Pretty big. It's pretty big. All right. Let me check my email, see if it's embargoed, if I could actually talk about it.
So in the meantime,
probably not the best bet to check the email after you announce, but whatever.
You don't know what I'm talking about.
So
yeah, I do.
So for that,
you get the email?
Yeah, I know what you're talking about.
Okay, is it embargoed now or what?
Oh, I don't know. I just know what it's called and who's behind it and stuff like that.
By the way-
Anyway, John,
By the way,
you've
I
been
have no
losing
idea
your
what they're
mind
talking about.
tonight.
Yeah. Absolutely.
I think it's been the roughest for you, buddy. You all right?
The total nonsense that they're putting whatever audience they have. Did anybody check that score on the Carolina? I'm kidding. All right.
I don't know, John. You may have been right. Maybe we should have just commented on Thursday Night Football.
I know. What they said about tariffs, they were trying to bash Donald Trump, yet they ended up saying that they were going to do exactly what Trump is doing.
You can't praise him, but their ideas are the same as his.
We have to have leverage, and we have to be able to negotiate.
We have to stand up to China.
Yes, I'm going to stand up to them. Nobody's ever stood up to them until Trump got there. They sound moronic when it came to that. Absolutely moronic. The border control stuff, let me tell you, without ICE, we're in huge trouble. I have no idea what these guys are talking about. They're talking out both sides of their mouth. But again, to me, the biggest disappointment was the tariffs. Just apps. And the troops overseas. That was another joke. How is it that they already removed the troops once? It became chaos. Remember ISIS is the JV team?
Yeah.
They became the varsity real quick. You can't just pull people out of there. Warren was completely off base on that.
Listen, the second kind of segment of debate night, they were supposed to break out with some foreign policy. They were really, I believe, supposed to. These were, I believe, their home run issues, right? They were, come out and really try to attack the president on these issues. Notice how on foreign policy they really didn't do that great of a job.
Because it's not sexy.
And you can't attack him on this. You can't attack him on his.
But it's hard to. You can't appeal that to racism or bring up some black mom you met at a Denny's. It's not as you can't make it as sexy as these other domestic issues.
And I was very sick at the end of this hearing how the charter schools and the conversations were supposed to be about that, and ended up just being we have racial issues, and that was all there was about. That's all there was to it. These guys, Harris is done. I
told you tonight was going to be the beginning of the end.
Yeah, Kamala Harris needed a strong showing. She's done. Beto, they haven't even asked a question to in the last 30 minutes.
No one's standing out. No one's standing out. No one's having a breakout moment.
Biden is standing out. He went on the offensive. I have to give him
I think
some
he's getting
credit.
tired.
But he's kind of drowned
sleeping.
out.
He's getting sleepy. Listen,
right now he's sitting there going, I missed those 2-hour debates.
Listen, I think everybody is kind of mellowing out. Bernie's not as feisty anymore. You know what? You know what's happening right now?
They're not asking him many questions, really.
It's fatigue. We're now into, this is what, the third hour?
Yep.
It's the third hour now, folks. These candidates are, here it is. Here's the commercial we're talking about, folks.
Here as well. Thank you for your perspective. Much more to
Wait,
come.
that's not on? No, that's not local.
With our affiliate KTRK. She's here on campus with a bunch of students. Hey, Pooja, what moments have gotten the biggest response so far there with that watch party?
What is this?
Have seen
So that's the commercial.
A lot of clapping, a lot of cheers, really every time any one of these candidates brings up historically black colleges and universities, and also.
She running against?
No. So what the kind of insider information we have is
that was online too, so I don't know how.
Was that online? Well, it was embargoed, so we officially. Well, we just saw it.
If you Google GOP 20 minutes ago, it would have showed you that commercial was going to play. So
all right, so it was so it's New Faces GOP. It's a new political action committee. Okay, New Faces GOP, new political action committee, and it's starting to kind of take the fight to AOC, take the fight to everybody, and say, look, we are Republicans. Look at Jairus. He's a black Republican. Look at Guillermo. He's a Latino Republican. Listen, we're not all one flavor. We're not racist. We're not white. We're not all white. We're every flavor.
I hear it, but it looked pretty powerful.
Yeah, so we'll play it once.
I'm sure you'll be able to find it online.
You can. And officially at 11 o'clock Eastern time, we can go ahead and say something about it.
By the way, I think I was.
She'll be on tomorrow with us.
I think I was just told by you guys I'm the token white guy. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I mean, I'm still waiting for you to pay for some reparations here.
All right, here we go.
On that.
Back to the debate with our ABC News affiliate.
Do we have to, though?
I'm exhausted.
Without resilience, every president confronts crises, defeats, and mistakes. So I want to ask each of you, what's the most significant professional setback you've had to face? How did you recover from it? And what did you learn from it? Vice President Biden.
Haven't made a mistake.
I never counted any professional setback I have as a serious setback. There's things that are important, things that are unimportant.
Uh-oh.
clear the protesters now. Just 1 minute.
Who are they protesting?
It's like Kavanaugh all over again. Jeez.
Senator Biden, we'll start the clock again.
What if Joe was like, you don't have to?
I don't even. Does everybody know what they're saying?
No. We'll figure it out on Twitter in a second.
I'm sorry.
We're sorry. Go
Why are
ahead.
you sorry?
There's setbacks and there's setbacks. And I think the most critical setback that can occur to anyone is to lose.
Your son.
Well, my dad had an expression. He said, Joey, it's not a question of succeeding whether you get knocked down, it's how quickly you get up.
So does Sly Stallone
and
say
you
that?
say, you never explain and never complain. And then go on to say that the only obligation that really matters, the most important thing, is family. And so I was raised to believe that that was the center of everything, family. And it could be judged on based how you treat your family and how you went from there. And it took, Kierkegaard said, faith sees best in the dark. Right after I got elected, my wife and daughter were killed in an automobile accident, and my two sons are badly injured. And I just been elected, not sworn in. And I lost my faith for a while. I came back. And then later, when my son Bo came home from Iraq and with a terminal disease, and a year and a half later, losing him was like losing part of my soul. But the fact is that I learned that the way you deal with it is you deal with finding purpose in what you do. And that's why I hope he's proud of me today, because he wanted to make sure I didn't run for president, but I stayed engaged. Because when you get hit badly, whether you're losing a job or you're raising a family like my dad, where you have to make that longest walk up the stairs to tell your kid you can't live here anymore, dad lost his job, we've all went through that in some form or another. And it just for me, the way I've dealt with it is finding purpose. And my purpose is do what I've always tried to do and stay engaged in public policy. But there's a lot of people that through a lot worse than I have, get up every single morning, put their feet one foot in front of another without the help I had. They're real heroes out there.
Thank you.
Best answer of the night.
Except that didn't answer the question about professional mistakes.
Well, I think it was a good
nice talk.
I mentioned earlier, I've known
you just
what
clinched
I
it
wanted
right
to
there.
be since second grade. I wanted to be a public school teacher.
Boo, you already said
I
that.
invested early. I used to line my dollies up and teach school. I had a reputation for being...
Line her dollies?
Biden just clinched
I
it.
graduated from high school, my family
Did she have black
didn't have money
dolls?
for college
So she
application,
didn't have
much
black
less
dolls.
to send me off to 4
She's a
years
racist.
at a university. And my story, like a lot of stories, has a lot of twists and turns. Got a scholarship, and then at 19, got married, dropped out of school.
She's not relatable, folks.
Took a minimum wage job.
Listen.
Thought my dream was over. I got a chance down the road at the University of Houston. And I made it as a special needs teacher. I still remember that first year as a special needs teacher. I could tell you what those babies looked like. I had 4 to 6-year-olds. But at the end of that first year, I was visibly pregnant. And back in the day, that meant that the principal said to me, wished me luck, and hired someone else for the job.
We have a lot of fact checkers tonight on this
I
story.
can't have a job. What am I going to do? Here's resilience. I said, I'll go to law school. And the consequence was I practiced law for about 45 minutes and then went back to my first love, which is teaching. But it let me get into fights. It gave me new tools. And the reason I'm standing here today is because I got back up, I fought back. I know what's broken. I want to be in the fight to fix it in America. That's why I'm here.
None of these people can be relatable. They're going to struggle with this question.
Resilience, to me,
Not Bernie. Come on.
means growing up in a rent-controlled apartment in Brooklyn, New York, the son of an immigrant who came to this country without a nickel in his pocket. Professional resilience means to me, George, running for U.S. Senate in Vermont and getting 1% of the vote. Running for governor and getting 2% of the vote. Finally becoming mayor of Burlington, Vermont with 10-vote margin. What resilience means to me is that throughout my political career, I have taken on virtually every powerful special interest in this country. Whether it is Wall Street, whether it is the insurance industry, whether it is the pharmaceutical industry whose corruption and greed is killing people today, whether it is a military-industrial complex or a prison-industrial complex. And I feel confident that given a lifelong record of taking on powerful special interests, of standing up for the working families of this country, that I will be able to take on the greed and corruption of the corporate elite and create a government and an economy that work for all of us, not just the 1%.
Thank you, Senator Sanders. Senator Harris.
You know, every office I've run for, whether it be district attorney or attorney general, I was told each time, it can't be done. They said, nobody like you has done it before. Nobody is ready for you. When I ran for DA, I won and became the first black woman elected DA in a state of 40 million people in San Francisco. When I ran for Attorney General of California, I was elected because I didn't listen. And I was the only woman black elected Attorney General in the state, in the country. And each time people would say, it's not your time, it's not your turn, it's going to be too difficult, they're not ready for you. And I didn't listen, and a part of it probably comes from the fact that I was raised by a mother who said many things that were life lessons for me, including, don't you ever let anybody tell you who you are, you tell them who you are. And when I look around the town halls that we do in this race for President of the United States, and I look at the meetings that we do in the community meetings, and I see these little girls and boys, sometimes even brought by their fathers, and they bring them to me, and I talk to them during these events, and they smile, and they're full of joy, and their fathers tell them, see, don't you ever listen and let anybody ever tell you what you can or cannot be. You have to believe in what can be, unburdened by what has been.
Senator Harris, thank you very much. Mayor Buttigieg.
You know, as a military officer serving under Don't Ask, Don't Tell, and as an elected official in the state of Indiana when Mike Pence was governor, at a certain point, when it came to professional setbacks, I had to wonder whether just acknowledging who I was going to be the ultimate career-ending professional setback. I came back from the deployment and realized that you only get to live one life, and I was not interested in not knowing what it was like to be in love any longer. So I just came out. I had no idea what kind of professional setback it would be, especially because, inconveniently, it was an election year in my socially conservative community. What happened was that when I trusted voters to judge me based on the job that I did for them, they decided to trust me and reelected me with 80% of the vote. And what I learned was that trust can be reciprocated, and that part of how you can win and deserve to win is to know what's worth more to you than winning. And I think that's what we need in the presidency right now. We have to know what we are about. And this election is not about any of us up here. It is not about this president, even though it's hard to talk of anything else some days. It's about the people who trust us with their lives. A kid wondering if we're actually going to make their schools safe when they've learned active shooter drills before they've learned to read. A generation wondering whether we will actually get the job done on climate change. And if we hold to that, then it doesn't matter what happens to each of us professionally. Together, we will win a better era for our country.
Mayor Buttigieg, thank you. Mr. Yang.
I was an unhappy lawyer for 5 whole months, and I left to start a business. And I'm going to share with you all one of the secrets to entrepreneurship. If you want to start something, tell everyone you know you're going to do it. And then you don't have a choice. You put your heart and soul into it, and even though I did that, my company flopped, had its mini rise and maximum fall, lost investors hundreds of thousands of dollars, still owed $100,000 in school debt. My parents still told people I was a lawyer. I guess it was a little easier. So I remember lying on my floor looking up, wondering how it had come to this. Eventually, I picked myself back up. I kept working in small growth companies for another 10 years and eventually had some success. Then after I did have some success, I still remembered how hard it was, how isolating it was, how it feels like your friends no longer want to spend time with you. And so I spent 7 years starting and running a nonprofit that helped train young entrepreneurs around the country, including Sean Wen, who's here in the audience tonight, who left his gilded Wall Street job to become a food entrepreneur in San Antonio. Sean, I hope I made the process a little bit easier for you than it was for me. But the goal of my campaign is to make this an economy that allows us to live our human values and aspirations.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Yang. Senator Booker.
So my biggest professional setback is embarrassing because a lot of folks know about it. I, with a bunch of tenant leaders in Newark, New Jersey in 2002, took on the political machine, and boy, did they fight back. I had tires on my car slashed, our campaign offices were broken into, my phones were tapped. It became a spectacle, and we lost that election. And here's a bit of advice to everybody. If you're going to have a spectacular failure, have a documentary team there to capture it, because it made for an Oscar-nominated documentary called Street Fight. But then, unfortunately, another setback, it lost in the Oscars to a movie called March of the Dagnab Penguins, for crying out loud. The people in my community, living in the projects, told me, don't give up on the people, and the people won't give up on you. Create bigger and bolder coalitions, and you're going to win. And you know what? We came back 4 years later and won the largest lopsided victory in our city's history. But more than that, the lesson was there. We didn't give up. We were taking on America's toughest problems, from crime to poverty, and we transformed our city, creating tens of thousands of new jobs, the biggest economic expansion in our city, and as I said before, turned around our school system. There's more work to do, but I haven't given up on the people. I still live in that community. But this is the big lesson. My staff and my friends and my community told me, if you want to go fast, you may have won the mayor's race, but that's not what life is about. There's an old African saying that says, if you want to go fast, go alone, but if you want to go far, go together. The lesson I learned of resilience is to trust people, because the power of the people is always greater than the people in power. And the test of America right now, it's not a referendum on Donald Trump, it's a referendum on us and who we are and who we're going to be together. We need to use this moment in history to unite in common cause and common purpose, and then there's nothing we can't do together as a nation.
Senator Booker, thank you. Congressman O'Rourke.
Thank you, George. Everything that I've learned about resilience, I've learned from my hometown of El Paso, Texas. In the face of this act of terror that was directed at our community in large part by the President of the United States, that killed 22 people and injured many more, we were not defeated by that, nor were we defined by that. The very thing that drew that killer to us is the very thing that helps us set the example for the rest of this country. We don't see our differences as disqualifying or dangerous. We see them as foundational to our success, to our strength, and to our security, and to our safety. Yesterday, I was visiting with one of those victims. He's the head coach of the Fusion. This is a girls' soccer team of 10 and 11-year-old girls. His name is Luis. He was shot in the legs multiple times. He was shot in the side multiple times. He's still healing from his wounds in the hospital, but from his hospital bed, he's still trying to coach the Fusion girls' soccer team. Memo, his co-coach, is still fighting for his life right now at Del Sol Hospital. Those two men, Jessica and Marcella, their wives, they exemplify resilience to me. And when we end this scourge of gun violence in this country, when we finally confront the racism that exists in America, when we're defined not by our fears, but instead by our aspirations and our ambitions, it will be in large part, I think, thanks to the example that El Paso has set.
Congressman, thank you. Senator Klobuchar.
My challenges and resilience have brought me up here. I grew up with a dad who struggled with alcoholism his whole life, and after his third DWI, he had a choice between jail and treatment. He chose treatment with his faith, with his friends, with our family. And in his words, he was pursued by grace. And that made me interested in public service because I feel like everyone should have that same right to be pursued by grace. I then got married. My husband's out there somewhere, hopefully smiling, and our daughter. And our daughter was born. I had this expectation we were going to have this perfect birth, and she was really sick, and she couldn't swallow, and she was in and out of hospitals for 1.5 years. But when she was born, they had a rule in place that you got kicked out of the hospital in 24 hours. She was in intensive care, and I was kicked out. And I thought, this could never happen to any other mom again. So I went to the legislature, our state legislator, not an elected official, a mom, and I advocated for one of the first laws in the country guaranteeing new moms and their babies a 48-hour hospital stay. And when they tried to delay the implementation of that law, I brought 6 pregnant friends to the conference committee, so they outnumbered the lobbyists 2 to 1. And when they said, when should it take place, they all raised their hand and said, now. That is what motivated me to go into public service. And when I got to that gridlock of Washington, D.C., and got to work and pass over 100 bills, and I know a lot of my friends here from the left, but remember, I am from the middle of the country. And I believe if we're going to get things done, that we have to have someone leading the ticket with grit. Someone's going to not just change the policies, but change the tone in the country, and someone who believes in America and believes it from their heart because of where they came from, that everyone should have that same opportunity.
Senator, thank you. Secretary Castro.
And thank you, George, to Jorge, to Lindsay, and to David, and to all of y'all for tuning in tonight. In many ways, I shouldn't be here on this stage. You know, Castro is my mother's name and was my grandmother's name before her. I grew up in a single-parent household on the west side of San Antonio, going to the public schools. Eventually, my brother Joaquin and I became the first in our family to become professionals. And when I got home, I took a job at the biggest law firm in town. I was making $100,000 a year in the year 2000. A few months later, I got elected to the San Antonio City Council, and the City Council at the time was only paying $1,040 a year. So everybody had another job, and my job was at the law firm. Well, a few months after I got elected, the law firm got a client, and the client wanted those of us on the City Council to vote for a land deal. The land deal was that they wanted to build a golf course over our water supply, because we relied on an underground aquifer. I didn't think the Environmental Protection Plan was strong enough, so I wanted to vote against it, and my constituents wanted me to vote against it. But under the ethics rules for lawyers in Texas, because believe it or not, lawyers have ethics rules, you can't just go against the interests of a client, so I was stuck. On the one hand, I wanted to do the right thing. On the other hand, my livelihood, my student loans, my new house payment, my car payment depended on me shutting up, being conflicted out. So one day I walked into my law firm and I quit my job. And then I went and I voted against that land deal on the City Council.
So crazy.
And, you know, it was the first test that I had, and I think back to that because oftentimes we think of politics and you think of politics as dirty or corrupting. I wondered before I went in it whether it would change who I was. And I was proud that when that first test came, that I stood up for the people that I was there to represent and not for big special interests. There's nobody that gets tested more in a position of public trust than the President of the United States. This president has failed that test. But I want you to know that if you elect me president, I won't. I won't serve anybody except you and your family. And together, we can create an America that's better than ever. Thank you very much.
Secretary Castro, thank you to all of our candidates. It was a great debate. I think we learned a lot tonight. Thanks to you. Thanks to Texas Southern University for hosting us tonight. It was a great crowd.
Thank you.
As well tonight. Thanks to you. Thanks to everyone at home. The debate is over. Our coverage continues with Tom Llamas.
Gracias.
And George, thank you. A great debate tonight with you and all of our terrific moderators. The debate is over, as you said, but still so much to talk about and so much to watch right now. And we are going to be watching. If Vice President Joe Biden and Secretary Castro have any type of moment there on the stage, it looks like they may not be shaking hands. Rahm Emanuel, former mayor of Chicago, you work with Joe Biden in the White House. That moment where Secretary Castro went after Vice President Biden upset you. You say your phone started to blow up, people started to text you. What were Democrats telling you?
I think for Castro, he could have made the point. He had a legitimate point, but it was a disqualifier the way he handled it. Second, I would say is each of these candidates had strong moments, some with humor, some with arguments, some with the passion, energy they brought. But I thought for Castro, and his close was very good, but that was a disqualifier the way he handled it. It will come across as mean and vindictive, and that's not who he is. But I think each of these candidates actually advanced. Amy, Kamala, they all advanced themselves in one way or another here.
Yvette Simpson, you saw the moment a different way. You're in tap with the progressive part of the party. Tell me what you thought.
You know, I mean, I think, one, he was interrupted by the vice president. He was answering, and he was interrupted, and the vice president was incorrect, and then Castro tried to correct him, and he wouldn't let him. And so I think in this moment, what we have to remember is this is not a game. This is a presidential campaign. What would Trump do to our nominee in that situation? And so at the very least, it's a great opportunity to test our eventual nominee, our vice president, the front runner, to see what he would do.
All right, welcome back to the New Talk Radio 1680 KGED. And you're now into our post-debate coverage. Apparently, ABC, our news affiliate, and Univision couldn't take very much more of this because it's supposed to go 3 hours, right?
And they cut out a little bit early.
Yeah. Thank God. They're doing all of us a favor. Yeah. All right, big takeaways. Jairus, you want to go first?
Boring night. I mean, listen, I told my boy Johnny this, too, when we were going into this. I'm trying to learn my lessons, all right? We talk this up. We always say that it's going to be great, it's going to be this, it's going to be that, and then most of the time, at least the first 2 times, we sat here afterwards and said, good Lord, that was boring, and we learned absolutely nothing new. That's kind of where I'm at. I mean, the only thing that we started to see among all 3 of us is the lower polling someone is, for some reason, the more they wanted to attack Donald Trump, and the higher polling someone is, the more they wanted to talk about their actual ideas. I think the biggest Beto saying that the El Paso shooter was motivated to kill by President Trump. Probably out of all the craziest things that we heard, that's still, and he said that within the first few minutes of the debate, that still stuck out to me after it was over, that was still just one of the most craziest things. And Julian Castro later on in the night basically seconded that same sentiment.
A lot of them did. A lot of the lower polling people, just as you said, Kamala Harris going after Trump numerous times, Beto, Castro, Booker, That just seemed to be a common theme in the way they all let off that way. All let off that way. And I don't think people want to hear that. I think people, granted, maybe their audience thinks that way of Trump, but I'm here listening to you, and nobody gave plans. I'm going to do this and I'm going to do that, and nobody had a clue how. I think the most frustrating moment that I had was all the $60,000 that they want to give all the teachers. Yeah. And then they also want to take the world, or I should say with Bernie, we're going to pay all the teachers $60,000 and nobody's going to pay college tuition. How are these teachers going to get paid $60,000? How much can you possibly raise our taxes? If they raise my taxes the way Bernie wants, I can't afford my mortgage. Are you here to tell me that the mortgage company is going to go, it's okay, John, we understand because Bernie's president now and it's all going to be okay? I mean, none of this makes sense. Not one piece of it makes sense logically, mathematically. It's very frustrating to watch.
So I just want to be very clear. My analysis is 2020, if it continues this way, if these debates, nobody has a breakout moment, 2020 is in the bag for President Trump. 2020 he's going back to the White House. It's going to be 4 more years. There was not a single breakout moment that these candidates capitalized on. They were one note, they were one tone, kind of like the first 2 debates. And the other thing that kind of dawned on me was there isn't a single unifying rally cry or issue. There's not like we don't have, and I don't want to say ongoing war because, they did talk about Afghanistan, but there's not one thing that is so bad that they're using to take out the president, because there really is not one thing. The president is doing extremely well with the economy. He's doing extremely well with foreign policy. Really, they have nothing. Like, remember Bush, he got easily reelected because of what? There was an issue, right?
You don't think that's climate change?
We didn't want.
That's what I was going to say.
It's not, because they haven't been able. I hope I'm making sense. There's not one unifying issue that they can say that guy out of the White House needs to get out because we got to do this. There's not. we're doing pretty well.
I think
that's
climate change is the thing.
No, it's not. They're not using it effectively, and it's not resonating with the people.
Explaining it effectively.
Well, no, because listen, climate change. When you look at the polls and the American people actually caring about it, I forgot which one it was, but if they're going to go ahead and not be able to,
it's not as high as
it's like number 16 out of 20.
Yeah, it's not that.
So
high.
the reason why they are all ineffective is because the president's actually doing pretty well. They really don't have something that he is truly screwed up on. I did not hear them mention Mueller. I did not hear them mention Russia. Did you guys hear them mention Mueller or Russia?
No.
Oh,
no.
they would never mention the Mueller.
Well, no, this is what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There's no single one thing that the president is totally bombing on that they can rally. It was ho-hum. There's no issue. There's no thing. Their theme is...
And when they mention China, they embarrass themselves.
Well, they embarrass themselves on foreign policy.
Yes,
because
very much so.
because they're so in the bag
Yeah.
for... they're so in the bag against guns, immigration, and environment that they actually started trying to include those in their foreign policy. That's why they talked about climate change and foreign policy. They have no foreign policy credentials, which really surprises me because half of those people have been on foreign policy committees.
Yeah, which that actually should scare you. I mean, Senator Warren, let's talk about U.S.-China relations. Well, great. Let's start with climate change, and then we're going to touch on guns, and then we're going to touch on institutional racism. Let me throw it right back to you, Mr. Stephanopoulos. And she gave no substantive answer on anything.
Yeah, no, it was...
That is a very good point. A lot of these people allegedly are on the most powerful the committees, foreign relations committees, and they don't know jack nothing.
A lot of these people have been around politics for very many years. They have a lot of insider information. They sit in many committees. They have a staff of probably over 20 people each, and they still don't sound like they know the issues. And you know what? That question about, hey, what has happened in your life that has made you, stronger, or anything.
Initially, it was supposed to be about personal mistakes or personal setbacks.
They couldn't be personable. They couldn't be personable in a realistic way.
Castro tried to. I think a few people did.
But a few of them tried that whole thing at the job interview. What's your biggest flaw? I don't have any flaws. Or what's your biggest flaw? I work too hard. They didn't come off as actual people. Would they kill you one time just to admit that you had a mistake?
Yeah, Biden probably had the strongest closing line at the end. I am surprised, I have to say. I did not think that Biden would come strong. I didn't think he'd be as offensive as I thought I was touting that he needed to be offensive.
Yeah.
But I doubted that he would, but he proved me wrong. He did come out on offense. So I would say as the people who had the best night, I think it's Biden.
Yeah, I think so too.
You think Biden might have had the best night?
Without a doubt, Biden had the best night. Let me kind of, okay. Amy Klobuchar, let me start from the left on the stage. Amy Klobuchar had I wanted to, Clammy. There you go. Clammy.
We didn't hear about Uncle Buck.
Clammy.
So upset.
Clammy, because she was pretty sweaty. Amy Klobuchar did not have a breakout night at all.
Breakout night, no.
It looks like every time the screen went to her, every time she got a question, she had that deer in the headlights look, that Minnesota deer in the headlights
look.
It's
like she didn't know she was there to answer questions.
Exactly.
Like I was a little tremor in her voice, like she was nervous.
She was like, I thought I was just here to be like a vase. I thought I was just going to here to be a prop. I didn't know I actually had to say words.
She was in the Marianne Williamson area of the stage.
There's something about that area of the stage.
But she did worse than Marianne Williamson. We appreciate you if you're just joining us on Talk Radio 1680 KGED. All right, thank you. KGED 1680. And
we actually have, if you want to hear from the high Jew, Marianne Williamson.
Oh, Marianne Williamson. All right.
She actually had a comment. This is what she said at the hour point. Marianne Williamson, I completely agree with Marianne Williamson.
Okay.
She says, an hour in, nice people, nothing transformative, all incremental, ultimately boring, not even close to what we'll need to defeat the president in 2020. Marianne, I don't know what you're smoking. But that was the best thing you have ever said.
Why did she come off like that when she was on stage?
Be more like this on stage.
That's
People might like you.
Yeah.
Hey, Cory Booker.
Milk dud.
Cory Booker repeated the same lines. He said that he lived in the slums now about 3 times during the debate, which he's repeated every single debate.
In my community.
Cory Booker still hasn't been able to give us that Barack Obama character cadence that he so desperately wants. He wants to be somebody. He can't even be himself. That's the problem with Cory Booker. Now let's go on. Pete Buttigieg. I'm going to go through the line. Pete Buttigieg now. All right. This guy's been on an anti-Christian bend. He's a smart kid. He's had great debate night 1 and debate night 2. he seems like he's a little bit lost when all of the top polling candidates are on the stage. He needs kind of only one or two. He can't handle them all. He was pretty reserved. He was pretty quiet. He's kind of falling in that slump that I didn't think he was going to fall into.
I think he's a little upset of where he is right now, polling wise.
I think
I think a little bit of he just doesn't understand, especially when he looks over at like Bernie. He's like, how is it that I'm losing to this guy?
Yeah, no, and Bernie Sanders, folks. Bernie Sanders I
thought I did pretty good.
He's a broken record.
Yeah, I don't think Bernie had a good night.
I don't get how he electrifies young people. I really don't. I really don't.
He doesn't.
And I get it. It's the free stuff that he gives them. It's much less about him and more about what's coming out of his mouth and what he's promising. But this is what's riling up college campuses around the country.
Is it really though? He should be really disappointed with his campaign staff because his campaign staff still hasn't been able to find that 2016 aura that he had against Hillary Clinton. And maybe it's because
you can't
he doesn't have it
when
anymore.
You've got 3 or 4 other people just as socialist as you in the race. You can't replicate it.
Yeah,
he doesn't stand out like he did in 2016 for that reason. That part is absolutely
true. Because in 2016, he had 2 idiots who I can't even remember their names right now. It tells you how relevant they were.
Yeah.
And Hillary Clinton, the ultimate establishment politician in the United States of America. So it worked great. It's not working now.
Here's the fear with Bernie Sanders. He doesn't really have a grasp of even his own plan. He'll be the type of president that'll say, free college. I don't care how you do it, staffers. Figure it out. What? It doesn't matter. I promised the people free college. We're going to try to get them free college. He doesn't understand how this stuff works.
Taxing rich people. That's our answer to everything.
Yeah, that is his answer, but he really doesn't know how this is actually going to how he's going to flesh out. And when confronted with actual socialist countries and hey, why can't you tell us how you differ from Venezuela? He totally avoided the question.
Yeah.
Well, he was a big supporter of Venezuela.
He honeymooned in where?
Russia.
Russia, yeah.
But he was a big supporter of Venezuela back in the early 2010, 2011, and then all of a sudden there was a collapse. And no. I'm talking about a different type of socialism. I'm talking about Norway. And and when Norway collapses, he'll go to something else. Again, the math just doesn't work. He wants to spend so much on climate change. He wants to give the teachers a $60,000 salary, and he doesn't want to charge students for anything. I don't know who pays for what or how. You can tax the rich as much as you want, and that math will still never add up.
Yeah, it will.
And rich people will leave the country.
That's a good point. As soon as you pass this,
the people that you think you're going to tax are not going to be here.
Yeah.
They're not going to be here.
So you initially said, who did you think your winner was going to be, John, earlier on in the day?
Who did I think my winner would be?
Because you said about Elizabeth Warren.
I said Warren.
Yeah. What do you think now, as where you finished? What do you think?
I don't think Warren, I think she stays right where she was. I think Biden loses a tad. I think Kamala Harris.
I don't think she did anything to help herself.
No, she didn't do anything to help herself.
Did anyone, maybe Biden, but did anyone do anything to help themselves tonight?
Beto did not collapse like I thought he would.
Okay.
I thought Beto was going to collapse. I really, really did.
Yeah.
And he didn't. Maybe it was, I'm surprised. I
think this was actually one of Beto's best performances. And maybe that was because everyone, I don't know if that was like a DNC sanctioned rule. Hey, thank Beto before the end of the debate. I don't know what was going on there. But I think this was one of his best.
Yeah.
And hey, the worst word he said was hell, too. So look at that.
And then
Welcome back to our post coverage.
The Central Valley's home for all things Campaign 2020. Talk Radio 1680 KGED. And now, Guillermo Moreno, Jairus Jackson, and John Machiko.
Welcome back to our post-debate coverage. The only place you could actually hear the debate was right here on the new Talk Radio 1680 KGED. We had it live, and we're going to replay it after this hour. John Machiko from the John Machiko Show, which can be heard right here from 4 to 5. Jairus Jackson, which can be heard right here on 1680 from 2 to 3:45, and myself, Guillermo Moreno, coming in at 5. Well, we're kind of giving our thoughts on the debate, and we'll just kind of.
I agree with John. Our time would have been better spent watching the NFL. Can't believe I actually said it.
I know the score was 10-9 at some point.
Yeah,
That's all
I'll
I
watch
know.
Kaepernick or any of these spoiled brats. I'll watch them kneel, I'll do whatever. That would have been better than what the hell we just watched.
It was a
They
pretty.
keep failing us, by the way. Can we just say, these debates, they're going to be boring as hell. We're not going to figure out anything new. And Trump most likely is going to kick their behinds in 2020. Yeah. I think that just replay what I just said after every debate. It'll work for every single one.
I would say this. If this is the best they got coming after Trump, like if Trump is facing any of these guys, it's going to be a slaughter.
The DNC has a big problem.
A huge
The
problem.
Democrat National Committee has a big problem.
Huge. It's a huge problem.
He's the best Trump.
They do. They got a huge problem.
I can't even do that right.
They got it because they don't have a candidate that can take it all the way. Normally, you kind of know by now.
None of their candidates have an it factor.
They don't.
Yeah.
Tulsi did. Maybe.
Yes. The one that they're trying to keep away from everybody.
Just because she's hot.
No, but she does. I think Tulsi did have a little bit of an
is a
it
little
factor.
more moderate. She has an it factor. Come on now.
None of these, they don't have fresh, original ideas.
No.
That's number one. They can't be personable. They don't know how to reach out to the American people because
They
most
couldn't
of them
even bring themselves to say they had made a mistake.
No.
I mean,
and the thing that really took me by surprise, especially when they got into the tariffs and foreign policy, was basically, without saying it, I'm going to reiterate what Trump's trying to do.
Yeah.
But
I
you didn't
can't
want to give him any credit for doing it.
Yeah, so I got to
But
repackage
basically,
it.
Yeah.
So Bernie Sanders right now is doing a post-debate. You guys want to dip into it or not?
Let's see what I'm saying.
Well, premiums. If you pay $1,000 a month, what do you call that? Is that a tax for the insurance companies? What would you call it? All right, I would call it a tax. That's gone. How much are you paying out of pocket? That's gone. How much are you paying for co-payments? Gone.
How much?
How much are you paying for prescription drugs? Under Medicare for All, you won't pay more than $200 a year for all the prescription drugs you need. At the end of the day, of course, we're going to pay for it like every other major country out of the general tax base. Of course we will. Like we pay for military spending. It will be funded progressively. Upper income people will pay the bulk. I'm not going to tell you that average people will not pay more, but they will not be paying premiums, co-payments out of
He talks so fast. I'm not going to be middle. That's middle class, folks. Let's be clear. That's middle class.
A little bit upset. You know, this is Trumpism. You know, oh my God, somebody's going to be paying more in taxes. Yeah, no more premiums, no more co-payments, no more deductibles, spending less on healthcare than you currently do.
At least he's not trying to sugarcoat it.
I spoke with the healthcare CEO last night because I know we were going to talk about this. He is responsible for a chain of hospitals across the United States, and he told me Medicare right now has a problem going into 2026. How are we going to pay for all this? How are we going to pay the physicians? How are we going to pay the hospitals? Where does it go from here?
Let me repeat it again. Okay.
Let me say it again, dummy.
Per person on healthcare.
I'm on auto repeat. John, you're in the medical field.
His whole career is auto repeat.
Yeah, it is. John, you're in the medical. Did I say medical career?
Medical field.
Okay, good. You're in the medical field.
Mm-hmm.
Well, what do you think about all this? You know, these candidates really believe like all you could do is just wave a magic wand.
Woo. Okay,
and
so
all of a sudden everything's happy.
Thank you for asking me that, Guillermo. Do I have 45 seconds? All right. So one of the biggest problems what he's talking about and putting everybody on Medicare, they don't pay. They pay pennies on the dollar. Whatever the charge is, they pay pennies on the dollar. One of the problems that California has is the wait time is 5 hours and 36 minutes if you go to the ER because doctors can't take that insurance. You call up your doctor. Well, what kind of insurance do you have? I have Medi-Cal. Okay, well, we're not taking any more of that. The doctors can only take a certain percentage of that because they have to pay the light bill. They got to pay the utility bill. They got to pay their staff. They got to pay the EKG machine. They got to pay those things. You call the next doc. Same thing. What are you going to do? Because you have a cough. I have to go to the emergency room because nobody can see me in their office. Now you got wait times that are 5 hours and 36 minutes.
Yeah.
What happens is they don't compensate enough. They pay pennies on the dollar. Therefore, you're not going to get quality medical care because, and our brightest minds eventually are not going to be in medicine. What he is proposing is not going to work for the betterment of people. And that's the problem from a medical standpoint. He's wrong.
If we were to go for kind of a Medicare for all, do you think the ingenuity, our medical ingenuity, will cease?
Absolutely not, because what you're talking about is socialism and the great.
No, I think it will cease, right? Like,
it'll cease.
Yeah, you're not going to have people wanting to.
It would absolutely cease.
Nobody's going to want to become a doctor.
Nobody's going to want to become a doctor
or private practice.
Or because you can't do it.
You can't do it.
The other thing is, though, the great inventions that we have in medicine is because of a capitalistic society where people get compensated for the great ideas and inventing certain things. There is no motivation to continue on that journey of making medicine like the next frontier of medicine. We will not be the ones who discover it because there's no motivation for anybody to do it.
Yeah.
And that's the problem with socialism. And it's medicine through socialism. Everything's through socialism. There is no motivation. Listen, the government has never created or invented anything great that we use. It's always been the people. It's not, the government does. I want you to.
Postal service was pretty cool back in the day.
No, but I mean, it's been the same thing.
I know.
The last 200 years.
I get it.
There's when you take away the need, because necessity is the mother of invention.
Yeah.
And when there's no, people can't, if they're not going to benefit from it, if they're not going to, because it takes money to create something.
Yeah, no, for sure.
I mean, he's wrong. He's wrong.
Let's move to the guy everybody was watching tonight, because this guy is the only major. He was going to make it for himself or break it or really make it for everybody else or break it for himself. Joe Biden. All eyes were on the center of the stage. Joe Biden. He's polling pretty consistently near the top, or at the top. Not near the top. He's at the top. He's been there for a while. This was the debate that a lot of pundits and commentators say this is the one where Joe Biden can either seal the deal or this is going to go all the way to the Democrat primary. Do you think Joe Biden had a good night and said, "Yeah, I'm holding on to this torch"?
He stays.
I think. Go ahead, John. Take it away.
He stays at the top of the polls.
The real fight is between. So remember before when we were talking, we were talking to Larry Elder. Larry Elder agreed with me originally that it was a 3-person race: Joe Biden, Warren, and Sanders.
Bill O'Reilly.
Bill O'Reilly thinks it's a 2-person race, which is Warren and Biden.
Yep.
I got to go with Bill O'Reilly. I think there's only one person standing in Joe Biden's way right now, and it's Elizabeth Warren.
Yeah.
Joe Biden stays at the top.
Yes.
You want to know why? Because nobody cares about debates. The American people don't want to watch a 3-hour debate after they watched a 7-hour climate change, or they didn't watch
Actually,
it.
no one
let's
watched.
let's just be honest.
But for the Democrats that would have watched, they would finally said, "Okay, I'm rooting for this guy," and he finally showed some fight.
Yeah, no. So those, you're right. Those that did watch, Joe Biden came on pretty strong.
Absolutely. If you would have caught Biden between the commercials of the Carolina-Tampa Bay game, if you switched over to the Democrat debate,
which is probably what most people were doing,
you may have saw him fight a little bit and go, "Wow." I mean, I think he did very well for himself. I can't believe it's coming out of my mouth, but I think Biden
but
went
John,
on the offensive.
We had such low standards.
I know.
We're grading on the curviest of curves.
But
Okay?
we did say that if he does not go on the offensive, he's dead in the water, and he did do that.
Now, listen, I might be. You guys might get mad at me, but there was one moment that really touched me in the debate. It did.
Why would we get mad?
Oh, because I don't want this to get out.
Well, give us a chance
whatever
to get mad.
you feel.
See what he said. Give us a chance to get mad.
When Andrew Yang said, I know a lot of Asian doctors. No. The part that really touched me was Joe Biden giving that very inward. My wife died.
Yeah, no.
It's
always going to
my
be a
son
solid.
died.
No, it
but it wasn't. You know how the Democrats all fake it.
No.
They fake it.
Fake it. It happened.
They use the emotionality and fake it. When you looked at Joe Biden, that was from the heart.
Absolutely.
You could feel the pain that he had that occurred that he still has when his family. You talk about his son. He just stops, and you know what I mean. That made him so personable.
Yep.
It was such a good response. You remember who was after that just butchered it? Pocahontas.
Yeah, Pocahontas.
That response spoke to each and every one of those candidates.
It was very hard to follow that.
It was very hard to follow that because you know what Joe Biden has that all the others don't? Relatability.
Well, experience.
But relatability.
Yeah, he's Uncle Joe.
Who can you hang out?
Right.
Let's just be honest. If John Machico, if ABC, our affiliate, ABC Radio called and said, "Hey, John, listen, man, I got," and by the way, they did invite us all to this portion right here that everyone can ask questions.
Kind of glad we didn't waste money.
Me too. If they were to call you up and say, "Hey, any of these candidates, who do you want to spend
who do you want to have
20
a beer
minutes? Who do you want to have a beer with?"
Biden. But although I would enjoy Bernie just to for the laughs, but no, Biden.
Who would you?
Me?
Who do you want to have a beer with? Well, you can't. Who would you like to have a lemonade with?
Who would I like to have a Sprite with?
Sprite with, yeah.
Oh, that's right. You can't. Yeah.
I'd have to Kamala for sure. For sure, Kamala. No doubt about it. It has to be Kamala.
All right,
Maybe some of that black girl magic will come on to me. Who knows?
Okay.
But Joe Biden definitely is relatable.
No, of course. But
Joe
just the
Biden-
gaffes alone make him relatable.
Because listen,
help the
that-
relatability.
It is because
works for him.
who? Listen,
Sorry. The way that he talks and how he stutters and how he missays the word, it made that closing statement sound better. If it would have been polished and he made no pauses and he didn't make any mistakes, it would have came off too rehearsed and it would have sounded like Kamala Harris. The fact that that's the rhythm of how he talks and it's slow and it sounds like something actually might be wrong with him, that made it seem more genuine than if it was a polished final response.
Okay, and if you break down the very last thing when he talked about his wife and his son and all that, when he got to his son, there was that moment pause. Where he had to gather himself, and that's what made it real.
Yeah,
he had to gather himself for that quick split, second, and that made it real because he really he had to compose himself.
why is Joe running? Because his son told him, the one that passed away from cancer, the Iraqi war veteran.
Donald Trump is so evil that it brought me back to the campaign trail.
I don't know. I'm having a hard time believing.
Well, you just said he's believable, but that's what he says in his speeches. That's what he says in his talks.
Hey, you know why he says that, right? We all know why he would say something like that, right?
Why?
Because you can't come back and rebut that. When he says that, you just got to sit there and take it.
Do we think that he
You
can have
can't
two
come
debates
back-
in a row like this?
Oh yeah.
You do?
I told you guys this on night.
I
on
gotta
night
see one
one.
more like this.
Nah, I said on night one. Joe had a bad debate on night one. That's all right. His first round, he got hit by a pretty big punch.
But
He
we're not
wobbled.
just baiting. We're not saying it just based on the debate. We're saying it because of all the gaffes and he just looks slower and this was the best I've seen him look at.
He didn't listen. I think he looked about as good. He looked
That's
better
my
than some.
point.
Yeah,
I don't think he can do it twice.
That might
I
be
think
as
he
good as
can't.
it can get.
No, I think he can't. I think
He got a good night's sleep. He must have got a good day's sleep.
Drunk some milk.
Had a little siesta around 2 to 4.
Do you think this big of a field helps him out because he gets to break and you know what I mean? He doesn't get too many questions. Do you think when the field narrows to maybe the top 3,
could be tougher.
He has a more difficult time.
What if we see more of the first debate night Biden, the smaller the field gets? Because you're right. I forget that they were there. I'm not. You made the joke. I forgot about Beto. I really did.
Yeah.
I forgot about Beto.
Forgot about Pete.
Earlier in the night, I forgot about Warren because
Yang?
she was. Everyone, you always Yang spoke for all. I'd be lucky if he got 5 minutes. I always forget about Yang.
Yeah.
But yeah, you're right. That benefits him.
Okay.
And when it's, or for God forbid, 2 people, and it's a 3-hour debate with only 2 people, that's going to be pretty hard for Uncle Joe to stay in there.
They won't do 3 hours. Not with 2 people. So let me ask you: the biggest confrontation of the night was Castro and Biden. When he said, it seems like, I think it was Castro, when he said, it seems like when things are good, it was you, but when things were bad, you were just the vice president. It was just Barack Obama.
That's a point we had been making too, as
right,
well.
we did. And one of the commentators here thought that was a bad moment for Castro. And they didn't shake hands after this whole
now
thing.
walking up
That's
on him.
actually, they're probably going to talk about it right now.
All right, so this is Julian Castro talking to ABC. And again, we go out to our news affiliate, ABC Radio.
Talking about, social media is talking about. We want to roll that clip right now.
Are you forgetting what you said 2 minutes ago? Are you forgetting already what you said just 2 minutes ago? I mean, I can't believe that you said 2 minutes ago that they had to buy in, and now you're saying they don't have to buy. You're forgetting that.
I said anyone like your grandmother who has no money.
We need a healthcare system.
You're automatically
that automatically enrolls people regardless of whether they choose to opt in or not. If you lose your job, for instance, his health care plan would not automatically enroll you. You would have to opt in. My health care plan would. That's a big difference. I'm fulfilling the legacy of Barack Obama, and you're not.
I'll be surprised to him.
Now, Secretary Castro, we reviewed the transcript, but before I tell you what we found in the transcript, do you regret that?
No, we were having a debate about health care
Maury,
policy.
before I reveal the results.
Last time we were on stage in Detroit,
are not the nominee.
Senator Harris said that Vice President Biden's plan leaves 10 million people uncovered. Vice President Biden at the time said that wasn't the case.
fact checkers went back and they said, yeah, actually it is the case that his plan does leave 10 million people uncovered. I heard him describe his plan, and he said, as I looked at the transcript, that...
So you checked the transcript as well?
Of course I did. Of
Okay.
course I did. And this is an argument about healthcare policy. So this is important, right? We're talking about a policy that is going to impact every single person in this country. So what he said in the transcript was that if you lose your job, that you could automatically buy in to his plan. You need to catch the distinction here.
Right.
When he says you can automatically buy in, there is no automatic about it because people aren't all going to be able to buy in. The difference is, in my plan and some of the other plans that have been laid out, you don't have to buy in. You automatically would be enrolled. That's the distinction here. So I know that some have suggested...
All right.
Right.
No.
No, I was going to say, all right, so I had the wrong... I knew they fought. They fought about something different than what I said. But that is going to be the talking point tomorrow for a lot of people was, did Castro come off like you're trying to beat up on the old man? Or did he come off like, I know what I'm talking about and you're too old to know what you're talking about? Like, who wins that? Because I think Castro came off looking bad there, even if he was correct.
You know what this does? This gives us kind of a sneak peek, kind of a afterward sneak peek of the Obama administration. Because here you have two former Obama administration individuals, Joe Biden's vice president, Julian Castro, the HUD secretary. And you can tell that I bet you Obama had a real hard time wrangling these two for however many years they were together, because Joe Biden was okay with deportations.
Yeah.
Julian Castro was not. And I guarantee you he got Barack Obama's ear many a time and said, look, what are you doing, Mr. President? He's got a lot of bent up anger against Joe Biden. I don't think these are just free points or cheap points. He really dislikes Joe Biden. And so I think every time he's going to be on stage with them, I think he's going to go for a big haymaker every single time. And Joe Biden knows it's coming.
Well, the best part that for Biden was his final response, which was because he said, you're going to have to sign up for it. And Biden at the end said, well, that would be a surprise to the president. It was a good ending to it for Biden.
Well, it was because he had said, I'm the one that's going to carry on Barack Obama's legacy. And then Joe Biden said, well, that's going to be a surprise to, Barack Obama.
Yeah.
So, and it's pretty sad that these two candidates feel like, listen, we got to continue a third term of Barack Obama. That's why you're not going to win, because the American people don't want a third term of Barack Obama.
Well, talk to Hillary Clinton about how well that third term of Obama strategy
Barack
is.
Obama would be a moderate compared to any. I would listen. Let's just be honest. If we're going to lose the election, which we're not, we're going to win in 2020. We're going to take it to the bank. You can take that to the bank. But if we were to lose the election, I would rather have a Barack Obama type of Democrat than any of the individuals on that stage. And you know who the closest is to that? Joe Biden.
Yeah. So does Castro get hurt? Do his poll numbers go down, you think?
I think he's so irrelevant that it's not going to
go down much. I mean,
exactly.
They're close to zero.
I think the Democrat debates are irrelevant. There's no move.
Let me word it differently, because it does come down to there's going to be a lot of political donations now to the candidates that they feel may be viable. And does he get less money than maybe he would have otherwise?
Well, let me see if he's texted me, because Julian Castro likes to text me right after the debate. It's funny listening to, because we subscribe to all their emails, right? It's pretty funny reading them like, I just got off the debate stage and we killed it.
I don't know who actually believes it. They literally want you to think as soon as they exited, they just took out their iPhone and started sending you a message really quick. We killed it. We did such a great job. It's like, bro, we listened.
Wait, President Trump needs my help. Hold on.
Hey, let's be honest. Trump likes to send out some emails,
too. Has he tweeted already?
I have no idea.
I'm sure he has.
All I know for sure
is Marianne Williamson brought it to the house.
Listen, guys, Marianne Williams said they seem like nice people. It's it's boring, and not one of these people can beat President Trump.
That might just get her some movement again, man. She may end up on the stage next time.
I'm just saying, that was the most honest that I've ever seen a high Jew Marianne Williamson ever be.
High Jew.
Well, she's a Jew, and she's the queen of edibles as well. So where do we go from here, boys?
I'm sorry.
Does
yeah,
absolutely do we go absolutely nowhere? And this is exactly the same because that's kind of how I'm feeling. What says you, Jen?
The only thing I'm telling you is I think Kamala Harris took a hit. That's the one change that I could see where she drops in the polls even more. And I don't know. I don't know how many lifelines she has left.
I feel like she tried to recreate that black girl moment, and
she did.
Nobody wanted it. We weren't buying
Nobody wanted
it.
any part of it.
No,
nobody wanted any part of it.
And shut up with the stories. How many people has she met?
And she
I mean, honestly,
she didn't make any sense about anything.
You, me, we should be happy because we have to deal with the Democrat politician in California all the time, right?
Yeah.
What this shows me is just maybe a Democrat politician from California can't make it anymore because she's huge in this state, Kamala Harris. She just bombs on a national scale. We're kind of seeing her as like she truly is like a candidate. She had a craptacular opponent. It was Sanchez. I mean, she was horrible. The lady that did the dab in the debate, remember?
Mm-hmm.
It was so Kamala Harris. This is good for Californians because on a real debate stage, which this is. California Democrats don't fare well. Who was the other one? Eric Swalwell.
Oh, he was a complete
California.
Was a joke.
So this may be kind of a good sign for us because going into 2024, you're going to have another Californian on that debate stage, and his name is Gavin Newsom.
Shot.
So is it kind of?
I could be Gavin Newsom on that stage,
but you get what I'm saying?
Based on his record. I can't believe.
You guys get what I'm saying, though?
Yeah. No.
Like, why didn't Californians see this Kamala Harris?
I don't know. I all week I've been going, why do Californians vote for these people? I've been begging for an answer.
Yeah.
I don't understand. You just mentioned Gavin Newsom. He's had his fingerprints on the state since 2004, if not earlier. So that means the last 15 years. Look what is going on in San Francisco. Look what is going on in LA. You think he's going to get on a stage like that and be able to defend himself with the crap and the syringes and the homelessness?
Yeah.
His fingerprints are all over this. He can't defend his position. He would get crushed.
Yeah. Do you guys think there are any deals that have been cut?
I thought
that were noticeable tonight, which could account to why certain individuals were silent. Some bigger swings weren't taken. Are there some backroom deals being in there? I mean, are people just is Klobuchar just wanting a VP spot? Is that why she's like, I'm just gonna stand here in the corner, not gonna say nothing? Are there any? What's their motivation?
So we all know the most obvious one, which is the Warren Bernie, which that one's actually been well documented and confirmed. So we know that one. Well,
wait, hold on. You guys want to dip into Andrew Yang?
No, we really don't.
Here we go.
We really don't.
Billions of dollars in revenue very, very quickly.
You've gotten some buzz on the campaign trail, but the reporting about your rallies, about your supporters, mostly men, mostly young people, but the voters you also need to sort of win this nomination, the elderly, women. How do you attract them? How do you bring them into your tent as well?
I'm happy to say the Yang Gang is growing by leaps and bounds.
The Yang Gang.
Yeah, we're expanding beyond any of the demographics you just named. And if you come to one of our rallies this week, you'll see it's people from all over the map in terms of background and ideology.
If people watching this, this may be the first time they see you. They saw you on the debate stage. They're learning about you. You're having a lot of fun on the internet. You just told me you're the king of the internet. There's a lot of great memes.
King of the internet?
How can
That's
people
Al
take
Gore.
you seriously?
I
Why should
know.
people
What is
take
it with
you
these
seriously?
Democrats?
Well, the reason we're growing, the reason why I'm one of only two candidates whose campaign has been growing consistently this whole time is I'm calling out the problems the American people can see around us all the time. If I go to Iowa or New Hampshire, Ohio, and I say, hey, have you noticed stores closing near Main Street? They say yes, and I say, why is that? And they say Amazon, and they can see it. They can see the fact that pretty soon cars and trucks will be driving themselves. What's that going to mean for the 3.5 million Americans who drive a truck for a living, or the millions of Americans who work in truck stops, motels, and diners around the country? So I'm talking about very, very
cars
serious
driving
problems that
themselves isn't
unfortunately are
gonna
going to get
affect
more
the
serious
diners.
in the days and months to come.
Andrew Yang, we thank you for your time.
Well, cars that are driving themselves aren't going to go to a diner.
I don't. What was that?
He's basically saying that there's so many truckers that are driving these trucks that they stop at diners and Denny's, on their way. And so, listen.
Oh, you really think Denny's is supported exclusively by the truckers? Come on.
Let's just be real. He's on the stage. He made the top 10. Why is Andrew Yang garnering? He's got support. He's met the criteria. Why do you think America has that man on the stage?
$1,000. Here's my challenge. If you offer to give everyone in America $1,000 and you don't take off, you're a terrible candidate. You are.
So he gave 10 people $1,000 to show, like, all you had to do was go to his website, and that was a brilliant way of getting people to go to your website. It cost you $10,000. And even the other candidates were laughing. Yeah,
it stunned. You should go back. It stunned Pete Buttigieg for like 5 seconds. He didn't know what to do.
Pete and Kamala Harris were a little.
Because Pete's trying to give his traditional opening statement right after Yang just promised a bunch of people $1,000. So
yeah. Do you notice? Remember you guys remember democracy dollars?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So besides giving people $1,000 a month, he also wants to give people monopoly money. That's called democracy dollars. And this is what democracy dollars do. They go to the political candidate that you want to give to. So it's pretty much making every American a political contributor of some sort, which is
maybe you boys didn't know it, but you've given money to the Bernie Sanders campaign in this future alternate universe. And
no, you'll know. They're your dollars.
No,
they're your democracy dollars. Yeah.
I don't know.
Because
I think the reason that he's popular, as popular as we're saying, he's got 4% or whatever he's got. But I think the reason he's still in this is because he has a separate lane. His lane is a businessman. So you can't judge him on previous politics. You can only judge him on business. If he's been a successful businessman, which apparently he has been, then what is there to criticize? The second thing is he's young.
Yeah.
Third thing, he's a minority. He's Asian. So he's got some things going for him here that there's going to be a certain part of the population that's going to go, I like this guy.
You don't think he fades into irrelevance?
Eventually he does.
I think eventually he does. Yeah, I don't see this guy being he has the potential to be, because he's got that separate lane that nobody walks in but him, because he's a businessman. But he's got to look. Trump did it, but Trump already had an established name, an established brand. And let's face it, Jeb Bush, what was he really going up against?
You guys think he's a VP candidate at all, by the way?
No,
really quick?
No.
I think he'd be a smart VP candidate.
He would,
I think he would be a pretty darn good pick.
He would.
Minority, millennial, business owner.
I don't see
he could talk about business like President Trump could talk about business. He would be a very good vice presidential pick.
Yeah.
Him and Biden, they ain't gonna win. But
Biden,
Biden,
Yanging on Biden.
Yanging on Biden.
Biden's picking a woman.
That's the shirt right there. Yanging on Biden.
Yanging on Biden. Yanging on Biden. How does your mind work sometimes?
I have no idea. I got to get it checked out.
So you had mentioned, you talked about Trump at a debate. I'm kind of thinking, if any of these candidates would actually take President Trump's playbook, they would be, making leaps and bounds.
Well, Yang would be the one that would actually do it.
But why are they afraid? Like Julian Castro, he kind of was like, okay, Biden, I'm gonna kind of hit you this on the, but no one's come out.
They're playing WWE. I'm gonna hit you, and then maybe you'll fall down, and maybe you won't. But it's coming from this way.
But you get what I'm saying? When President Trump wanted to knock out 16 other people, he was going for knockouts. Remember? Yeah. Jeb Bush, what did he call him?
Jebra.
Lion Ted Cruz. I mean,
your brother got us into the war. Your hands are small.
Yeah. President Trump.
I'm not saying it, but I'm saying it.
He fought.
Yeah.
He went straight up New York style backstreet.
Well,
none of the.
That's why it was can't miss TV, because you knew he was hitting somebody.
Yeah, but everybody was like, oh gosh, I just want to say, Beto, so courageous.
And
then everybody,
Castro's
Beto, thank you so much. But he's got no fight. I think
doesn't come off authentic.
Americans love a fighter.
Yes.
We love a fighter.
Because we like fighting.
Yeah.
But Trump,
that's the truth.
You have to remember,
we like a fighter because we like fighting.
Trump was this New Yorker that was just true to himself. It is what he is. I mean, he's a fighter. He's this guy from Queens that, the thing, and he's always true to himself. If he goes to Texas to a barbecue, he's going to go with the same shoes that we see him, the same suit, the same, he's not going to dress in
That's
overalls.
a great point. I remember when he went to Iowa. Remember when he went to Iowa during the primaries, they were doing the porks, like how they grill the porks. He had on the suit and everything.
Yeah, he's not
dressed
going
like he
to
was
change.
going to a board meeting, grilling up pork chops. It was hilarious.
And that's just brilliant marketing.
Yeah.
Like, he doesn't change his speech. He doesn't change anything.
Hold on, John. We got to listen into the black woman.
Here's Kamala Harris.
Lord.
The need for public safety, the need for safe communities, and let's talk about the various ways that we achieve that. And that is why, in fact, I have offered a plan for reforming America's criminal justice system that the advocates have described as bold and as comprehensive.
Who are the advocates?
And a large part of it is saying, look,
Antifa.
it should not just be on law enforcement. We should be thinking about the fact that if the goal is safe communities, we've got to put resources into public education. We have to put resources into housing. We have to put resources into communities. And that's truly the way we're going to achieve public safety.
One of your strategies tonight clearly was going after President Trump from the get-go. You said he was watching the debate, then he could turn back to Fox News. You've been working the campaign trail. You've been out there talking to voters as well. What did you notice tonight about this debate, and what have voters been telling you about Senator Harris?
Well, Senator, people want to know why you're struggling to get support among African-American voters. And they're also curious what you think about why the former Vice President Joe Biden has such durable support among that group of voters. You've talked about how important they are. What do you make of that at this stage in the race?
Well, but there is an incredible amount of support there. And listen,
Not really.
I'm still introducing myself to the American people. I have not run before for president. We have at least a couple of people on the stage who have run once and some many times. I am still introducing myself to people and working on earning the vote of people.
Are you surprised
but
his
here's the
support's
thing
been so strong?
here's the thing that let's be really clear about, because one thing that we should be really cautious about doing in the conversation about this election is this whole electability issue. So let's just have that for what it is. First
She's
of all,
not elected.
the person who's going to be on that debate stage who defeats Donald Trump is going to be someone who has the ability to successfully prosecute the case against Donald Trump and point out all that is on that rap sheet that basically are indictable offenses for why he should not continue for another 4 years.
She can't
The
successfully
person who's going
prosecute
to
Trump
defeat
because he's
Donald
not black.
Trump will be the person who
She was only able to
polls are
successfully
telling
prosecute black
will
people.
actually defeat him on a
It's the
one-on-one.
truth.
I defeat him by a significant margin. What we know also is that the person who has to be on that stage to defeat Donald Trump and also lead our
This is
country
our best moment
has
in
to
the
have
debate right here.
ability to
Yeah, it is.
unify not only our party but the country. And I have a unique ability to do that.
Your colleague, your former colleague, Senator Heidkamp, has a question for you.
Hi,
how are you
Heidi.
doing? I wish that you would talk more about childhood trauma and the work that you
Yeah.
did, because that was such a significant part of your work as a prosecutor to recognize that foundational piece that involves children and building resiliency in children.
We kicked her
And
butt in the
so,
last midterms,
why
boys.
haven't you brought childhood
Ready?
trauma more into your discussion?
Well, I try, but it's just a matter of what gets covered, right? But you're absolutely right.
So
You're
that's
right.
Hey, we appreciate you joining us here on the New Talk Radio 1680 KGED, the only radio station that carried the debate for you. Well, that's because we're ABC radio affiliates.
You know what's funny is before the debate, we were really proud about that. Now we're all looking around like,
No, well, listen. I was expecting much worse from the Univision
That's a good
moderator,
point. That's a good
Jorge
point.
Ramos. I think, and not just because.
And what did he start with? Opening in Spanish?
Yeah,
We're all,
he did. He rebounded himself though, because he did get some pretty good hard. I think this panel was probably the best panel that we've had, and that's not just because we're ABC radio affiliates and you can hear them every hour on the hour for ABC News Radio.
No, the panel did not do that. There was a huge difference between Don Lemon and those guys and these guys.
They did a pretty good job.
Clear.
They did a pretty good job.
We didn't know who half these people were. So when you don't put on an Anderson Cooper that does an anti-Trump monologue every night, when you don't put on Don Lemons that does an hour of anti-Trump programming, when you get people that honestly, they're probably left-wing, yes, but they aren't as politically invested outwardly as the CNN panel is, you get better questions.
Yeah. Let me ask you this, guys.
And it wasn't all softballs. I mean, they asked
there were some
questions. Yeah,
there were a couple times when we were like...
It was Jorge Ramos who pressed Sanders on Venezuela.
Yeah. He did, but he didn't push him further. I think Jorge Ramos was like, this guy, he's just a waste of time. I'm not going to waste my time on him.
Though, I have this many seconds. I got to go to the next guy, and I can't keep pressing him and keep him on stage the whole time. But they ducked a ton of questions.
I want to go back to... I want to... Listen, we want to talk about having a breakout moment and getting these people to... Getting the Democrats to finally pick a candidate. You know, what I think Trump did so well in 2015 was he took it seriously, but he had fun. Do you think these candidates are trying to sell to the American people that life in America is crap. It is so bad. Everybody is, they can't breathe the air because of climate change. They can't go to the doctor. Everyone's losing their health care. There are no jobs. They're almost like they're trying to present a picture, but they're not. We know that that's not the case.
If this was my first, if I came to America and this was my first day in America, and the first thing I did was watch this debate, I'd be like, send me back to where I came from. It was this
Go back to where you came from, like Trump said.
This doom and gloom of like, oh my gosh, I got to get out of here. Listen to these guys. Honestly, the economy's doing fantastic. The only thing I can say is this. There were so many things that they couldn't answer for when they tried to. They basically were repeating what Trump is doing. And to think that they think they could do it better than Trump, we have to be able to negotiate with China. How are you going to do that? Especially Biden.
Yeah.
China walked all over you. They would love to see you back.
Yeah.
Biden. After your son got that big check, we really expect you to send it to China.
Listen,
that's going to be the thing that I'm waiting for.
You keep saying you're on this whole.
I'm telling you when this thing dwindles down.
Not gonna happen.
I'm telling you.
No. I don't think it's going to knock him down. Just to get out of here.
But there's going to be a point where he's going to have to answer for his son regarding Ukraine and China. He's going to have to answer for it.
If the Clinton Foundation, Benghazi, didn't bring down Hillary Clinton, they ain't going to bring down Joe Biden. It just not gonna happen.
I think Benghazi was a big reason that.
You think?
Yeah.
I think it was her. She's just
it was her. But the Biden, that Benghazi thing still sticks with me.
Yeah.
I can't forgive that.
So let me ask you this. You talked about China. This was kind of the answer for the China question, right? Horrible the way Trump is doing it, getting us into this trade war. I would do it better. China, you better improve your human rights, but we'll still trade and you can still take advantage of us. But you better stop these human rights violations and clean up your air. But we're going to be better than Trump, which was kind of just an oxymoron. They just fumbled on China.
I don't want to take up all the time here, but that is so annoying to me because China. You don't negotiate with China. This is the first time that a president has stood up to China because all the other ones tried to come up with deals, and China backslid on everything they said they would do, and we did nothing about it. Nothing about it. Finally, we have a president that said, no, your words mean nothing to me. I'm going to hit you with the tariff. Not that anybody likes tariffs, but if it's the only club you have in a fight, you're going to use it.
Yeah, and all these candidates thought they were going to be able to sit down with Xi Jinping and say, look, we're going to have a discussion about human rights and climate change. Xi Jinping ain't going to come to no table and talk about climate change, and he ain't going to come to no table and talk about human rights. They're all smoking the Marianne Williamson good stuff.
Can you imagine her facing Xi, and he's going to look at her like, have you lost your mind coming to me like that?
Yeah.
I'm doing some Native American signals here.
Oh, you guys are... Shall we get
Southern Elizabeth?
Let's hear what Pocahontas got to say.
Believe in. I got out there and talked about the things I'm fighting for. I got a chance to talk with America about the importance of public schools and how I've wanted to be a school teacher since I was in second grade. I just think it's a terrific opportunity, these debates.
And they weren't black dolls either.
On that stage, to be able to talk with the American people about who we are, and if you give us the chance, where we want to lead this country. And all I hope for is that I was as clear as I could be.
You say clear throughout the night. You said, let me be clear.
Oh, did I?
But just a little bit.
You did.
But just when you were talking about Medicare for All, the vice president pressed you on how you were going to pay for this and if you were going to have to tax the middle class to cover Medicare for All. What is the answer to that question? How do we pay for Medicare for All, and are we going to tax the middle class?
So let's do two parts to this.
Yeah.
We are paying for health care all across America right now. We pay for it.
I don't know about you guys, but I'm tired about hearing their health care plan.
She's going to dodge the question again.
Another thing we have to talk about was the many quick references about the criminal justice system and letting out criminals, okay, and reforming the police. Do you know almost every candidate talked about we got to let people out. Julian Castro was like, hey, there's 17,000 criminals we got to let out right now.
I didn't say let out every nonviolent.
Yeah. And then they kept saying, yeah, we need to have police reformation, police reform. They kind of just boom and just went on. Listen, if you elect one of these candidates, you're gonna have less police, and B, so much restrictions on our men and women in blue that it's not. If you think Obama was bad to our men and women in blue, you ain't seen nothing yet. Every one of these people want to take away the police of their ability to just do their job.
And doesn't even talk about what that's going to do to this nation that's already suffering police shortages in communities all throughout this country.
That's exactly what I was going to say. New York City right now is in a police shortage. I don't want to say crisis, but severe police shortage right now.
It's the same thing like with the health professionals. Why go into it?
Right. If you're not going to let police, then what is their job? They're not going to, when they all see the video of people dumping water buckets on them, and not able to do anything about it. I mean, men especially, there's this thing about we want to be respected for what we do.
Yeah.
Clearly, the police are not being respected for what they do in these big cities. So, they're not going to do the job.
Yeah, and for those of you a part of our national audience, we appreciate you, and especially we appreciate you if you're listening here locally on 1680, the only radio station having this late into this OT discussion. If we want to know what these Democrats mean by restricting the police, everybody just needs to look at California.
Exactly.
Because this is what they want. Each one of those candidates wants to restrict the ability of a police officer to use force. Hey, Mr. Police Officer, wait a minute. Did you see his hands? Did you flash a light in his face? Did you ask him to stop? Did you tell him to not come at you?
Did you answer the 15-question questionnaire?
Did you fill out the checklist before you pulled out your gun?
Do you know how dangerous that is for a police officer? You are trained to be reflexive in what you do, because if you wait a split second, it may cost you your life. There's there's no police officer that can do that job based on what Governor Newsom did. You will have nothing but more. You're going to have dead policemen.
And the worst part of this, folks, was a part of what the Democrat leadership in California wants to do about restricting the police, and what these candidates will do is, it's the legal standard is, if the police reasonably felt that his life was in danger, right? According to the police officer. Yeah. When I read the text of the legislation, it was, no, objectively. It was kind of outsiders. So wait a minute, forget about what the police felt. I mean, that's pretty darn important.
How does the Black Lives Matters activists in Oakland feel about the situation?
Yeah, exactly.
Which already is of the belief that every police officer is a KKK member in a black outfit.
Yep.
We're talking about this, and it's just dawning on me. The difference between Trump and these guys here is that Trump, from the outset, when he was campaigning, in 2016, when he was up on stage, you knew that he was going to lead through strength. He was going to know where his leverage was, and he was going to negotiate through strength. You don't find that in any of these guys.
Yep.
And you don't find it in the local government. You don't find it in a Newsom, or you don't find it in a de Blasio. The reason that Trump is successful is because he knows where his leverage is, and he negotiates through strength. There's the difference. And it gives you confidence. You're like, okay, I know how he's working. I know what he's going. Even with China right now, China's economy is the worst it's been in 27 years because of one guy.
Look, I'll tell you, we had
because he's dealing through strength.
Yeah, we had I forget what the organization is, but it was the Farm Labor. Was it the Farm Bureau here in Fresno County? We had him come in.
Oh yeah, that was a great interview.
Great. Oh man, he's with the Farm Bureau here, and he had said it because I asked him. I said, hey, are these agriculturally?
I remember that
we feed the world here in the Central Valley, and I said, hey, are these tariffs bad? And he said, Guillermo, listen, it's short-term pain for long-term gain. Yeah. Nobody is saying on the conservative side that, hey, look, we're struggling. We have some farmers that are struggling. But in reality, in California, the farmers have been struggling because we don't get water. So let's just kind of put this all into perspective.
But also, President Trump has put $28 billion, I think.
That is very true.
It's not like he's ignoring the situation.
No, but it's short-term pain for long-term gain.
And I've heard other farmers from other states say that.
Yeah, you cannot listen. You're going up against a country that wants to be the greatest world power. At one point they want to regain that power, and the Chinese have a long-term plan. When you're going up against, we are kind of, even though we're the superpower, we are kind of like David going against Goliath in this tariff. We kind of are, because the Chinese don't care. They're going to try to wait it out. I think the president is gaining steam, and we get it. Long-term gain, and we have the short-term pain.
China definitely does deal from a long-range view.
Yep.
If they got to wait you out 20 years, they will. And the problem is Xi's going to be president until he dies, because he made that law for him to be president until he dies.
And you talk about that too. There's massive benefits to you have a free market and you have a capital, or you have a communist government.
Yeah. You want to know what China? You want to know what China's doing?
They're waiting him out.
Xi Jinping is watching this debate. He's literally waiting for Trump to get out of office. Xi Jinping in China would love any one of these candidates on the stage
walk all over
Trump,
because they know, boom, as soon as they get in, guys, we are good. You know what I'm predicting? I am predicting, talk about collusion, the amount of money the Chinese are going to put into this race to try to get President Trump out. And everything President Trump has done would have been done in vain if any of these clowns get in there, because all they're going to do is kowtow. I believe if the Chinese, if we keep hitting the Chinese like this past 2020, they're going to cave, and we would have stopped a potential rival from literally taking on over the world. Hugh Hewitt said, and it's been on his show, the Chinese are putting 1 to 2 ships in the ocean every month. They are trying to build up their navy. So when Barack Obama had said a couple of years ago, let me be clear, it's all about technology. That's the modern warfare. Yeah, the Chinese were like, great, we're going to put more battleships on the seas because, hey, the sea ain't going anywhere. So
China, there was actually land out there that wasn't anybody's land.
Yep.
And China just decided to take it over. And then they kind of built a little city there. And then they kind of built a little military there. And we knew about it the whole time. The United States was watching it during the Biden-Obama or Obama-Biden administration. We observed, we looked, we thought about it, we talked about it, we did nothing. And they did it over and over and over because we would never act. We showed the weakness that Barack Obama and Joe Biden showed with that administration. I can't even fathom trying to go back to that again.
And that's exactly what we saw when they talked about foreign policy. They didn't come out and say it, but their foreign policy would be, America's going to go, we're going to ask the other countries what we should do. That was their stance. It literally was, hey, we got to ask our allies how we do this together.
Yeah, yet Biden's over there. We're the most powerful country in the world. We should lead. You don't lead by let's all get together and hold hands and discuss it. You lead. You know, we don't sit there and hold hands and sing Kumbaya and think everything's going to be okay. That's not the way it works.
We did not see a world leader on that stage tonight.
There wasn't. And if I'm Xi, I know that, and I go, all right, I'm calling Trump tonight. Go, okay, let's make a deal because this is going to be too long.
Listen, folks. If a Democrat gets in, there's going to be a lot of. I think it's going to be detrimental.
Of course it is.
I'm not going to sit here and say, it's the end of America as we know it. Listen, if any of these clowns get in there, I don't think it will be. I think there's enough conservatives out there to kind of fight back.
I think it depends which Democrat we're talking about.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not going to be like them. I believe that, maybe 2 presidencies or 16 years. Okay. All right, now we're in trouble.
Well, let me ask you. Your taxes go up to 50%, 60%. Do you think that's not going to change some things?
Yeah.
That's going to change it. I can't afford my mortgage if you're taking 60, 70% out of my paycheck.
Yeah. Well, you guys aren't multi-billionaires, so you have nothing to worry about.
That's only 2 cents.
That's right.
Yeah. Pocahontas said it's only 2 cents, all right? It's only 2 cents on those billionaires. That's going to pay for a 2-cent tax.
And by the way, let's just be clear. 2 cents is still 2 cents, no matter who it comes from.
Well, let's face
2
it.
cents from a billionaire is still 2 damn cents.
The person gets elected in November. They go into office in January. You know how many billionaires are going to leave this country between November and January?
You know what's happening to the stock market?
Oh, my God.
Come on, let's be real.
What's happened to the stock market is what they said would happen under Trump.
We didn't even cover that story today. But, was it Kramer, that guy that does the
Jim Cramer. CNBC.
And there were others, and that was a big story today about them being extremely concerned about Warren. Because of all these businesses would be leaving the United States again. That means less people employed. That means how much are you going to... The more people you have to tax, the better. The less people you have to tax, the worse. So you're going to tax us even higher.
Yeah.
I mean, we're going to take so many steps backwards if that happens. And listen, the social justice warriors and what they're fighting for. And you think they're going to stop the Antifas of the world or try to? You think they're going to, the gender fights and nobody knows who they are anymore. And now they're even, there's a story that I have in my folder here today that we didn't even get to regarding now they don't even want to correct your grammar now. I mean,
it's getting pretty bad.
People in the hood will be happy to hear that.
Oh, yeah.
So you're listening to the New Talk Radio 1680 KGED for our post-debate coverage, the only radio station bringing you the debate live here. I want to talk about education because the main theme on education with them was, hey, listen, we got to pay teachers more, and that magic number is $60,000. Once we give teachers more money,
no more dumb kids.
No more dumb kids. Everyone's going to be smart. No more summer school in America.
Because everyone's passing their classes.
And all we got to do is have more black teachers and instant success. And we got to kill those damn charter schools because they ain't working. And
have you ever seen the numbers?
Yeah, let's kill the one thing actually educating America's youth.
Have you ever seen the numbers? Do we even have time? Do we have a few seconds?
We got 7:31.
Oh, we got plenty of time. Okay. So the numbers, they just did this thing in New York City where they found that, was it 8th graders maybe? I can't remember what grade, but 45% were proficient enough to their grade level in science and 47% in math, and maybe vice versa.
Mm-hmm.
With the charter schools, it was 72, 75, 78. And the charter schools, as far as national testing, 99%.
Yeah.
How could you possibly say that charter schools don't work? Who would? I mean, honestly, how? And then what? Especially in California, what they're trying to pass with all this sex ed stuff early on, and the parents have the option of they can get their kid out of certain classes, but there's other classes where if you don't want your kid to be learning about LGBTQ stuff at 6th, 5th, 4th, 3rd grade, but they're intermingling it in there on certain classes that you wouldn't think would be in there. And as a parent, you don't have the option of them opting out of that.
It really is.
It's very disturbing.
It's governmental control of education. I think the most scariest part, and I can't remember for the life of me who said it, but they said that they essentially were going to send social workers into the homes to help the parents. What that screamed to me was the government's going to tell you how to raise your kid. And again, folks, here in California, they kind of wanted to do that, and probably still do. But the reality is, was it Joe Biden? No, it wasn't Joe Biden. It was Joe Biden said that? Social workers?
Social workers in the home.
No, that was Joe Biden.
It was Joe Biden.
Yeah, it was Joe Biden.
No, it was Joe Biden. So here's the problem with the Democrats' entire theory on education. They want to pay the teachers more, and they really want to get their hand on education. Why do you think they want to have education in there?
Because the next generation that's what I'm afraid of now.
Yes.
I'm afraid of that now. Are the generations that are going to be leading the country 20 years from now, what is it that they're learning in school are we even going to have a Republican Party? I mean, honestly, it's that bad. That's the number one thing. Donald Trump, those next 4 years, you got to make sure what's being taught in those schools are people got to have a reason to believe why America's great. You got to stand for something. These kids right now are taking classes. Nothing is great about America. So what is it that you stand for? Like, why would you even want to defend the country? Think about that.
All right, I'll tell you, we got 5 minutes left. Steve has been waiting patiently for a very long time. Steve, you're on.
Hey.
Steve, how are you, buddy?
I'm up past my bedtime.
Well, thank you.
In Chicago, it's 2 hours. It's almost 11 o'clock.
Yeah, 11:53.
Yeah. I want to congratulate you guys. You guys have done an awesome job on dissecting this farce, clown, circus show, whatever you want to call it. It was awesome to watch you guys pick up all the lies and deceit as it came out of their mouth.
Steve,
I love
that's
it.
nice. Thank you. Thank you very much, man.
And what you've seen tonight, and I'm not even going to compliment by saying they're Democrats. What you've seen tonight was nothing but socialist and communist programs. That's all.
Yeah.
They were buying people, and they were trying to sell people on stuff they have no authority to be messing with, or even talking about.
And those people are just, clapping away, think it's just the greatest thing they ever heard.
Yes.
Did you,
yes.
So who do you think came out as a winner of this, Steve?
There's no.
There's no winner. I know what you're saying, but for them, who do you think advanced their cause?
They're going to go for Biden.
So you think Biden was the guy that probably made the best case for himself?
I think he was the most. How can I say it? Neutral.
Yes. Did you think? Were you surprised
they were
at how
attacking him?
Were you surprised at how aggressive he was?
He came back pretty good, but he calmed down. You know.
Yeah. Well, he's standing there for 3 hours, Steve. He's tired.
Yeah. Well, I know it, but you know, I mean, I couldn't stand up and lie to people through my teeth for 3 hours. There's no way, absolutely no way, could I stand there and BS people for 3 hours. I mean, sitting there talking about Trump this, Trump that, our values. They have no clue on what our values are. Everything that they talked about destroyed every value, principle that we ever had. They don't know what this country was founded on. The immigration argument was totally ludicrous. There was nothing they said that resembled our immigration process or what our founders wanted.
Steve,
absolutely none.
Steve, thank you so much for coming up on a hard break, and I want to make sure that we all give our final thoughts. Thank you so much for staying up late.
Thank you, Steve.
Thank you.
Listening.
Thank you. And thank you for listening here on 1680, the new Talk Radio 1680 KGED. Closing thoughts, fellas. We'll start with, where do you want to go?
I say Kamala Harris got beat down, and I think Biden did well for himself.
Listen, boys. What? My boy Johnny, my South American brother Guillermo Moreno. Listen, it's a two-person race right now. I came in here thinking it was a three-person race. Bernie, nah. Three-person race, two-person race.
So you're the O'Reilly kid.
I am. I love some Larry Elder. We were glad he's been a part of our coverage, but I'm moving from Larry and I'm going to Bill O'Reilly. It is now Warren versus Biden. Now, who ends up winning that? I don't know.
I'm gonna echo what Steve had just said, folks. Well, you saw tonight on that stage were 10 candidates pushing socialism and communism. They were pushing government control, government intervention, and they were playing God. That is not what the American people want. If the American people even tuned in for 3 hours. After this, Joe Biden stays at the top. Bernie Sanders is going to get he's going to go down a couple points. Pocahontas is going to go up. Kamala Harris, Pete Buttigieg, Cory Booker, Amy Klobuchar, Julian Castro, Andrew Yang are all going to fade off into irrelevance. It was a big night for Joe Biden for those people that watched, and honestly, it was a big night for the moderators because I thought they did a darn good job.
Networks in the future, follow my advice. Stop putting the political pundits up there. That's when you get garbage moderators. Give us people we have to Google. Give us people we don't even know.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, good point.
So yeah, appreciate you two in here with our debate coverage.
Appreciate you as well.
No,
we've only been here since 10 a.m.
Yeah, and appreciate our board op Woody who makes us sound good.
Thank you, Woody.
Look good, and we appreciate you who took the time. We have your ears, your eyes, and we encourage you to come back tomorrow and every single day, Monday through Friday, when you can hear Jairus Jackson at 2, John Machiko at 4, and myself at 5.
You showing up on time tomorrow, buddy?
Maybe. This may be. Hey, we love all of you, and thank you to our ABC News Radio affiliate for a darn good job.
We got the replay coming up in a matter of seconds.
Replay if you missed it. Appreciate you guys on Facebook Live. Thank you so much, especially those of you on the East Coast staying up late.
Steve.
Oh, man, we love you more than you can ever know. And we really wish that, I wish that we could all be around, in one living room together with everybody watching that's on Facebook.
That would be great.
And our radio audience. It would be uncontainable. I mean, you could not, and it'd be a sea of red.
That would be fun.
See a red MAGA hat.
We have to go to the East Room of the White House to have a room to contain everybody.
That's right. We appreciate you guys, and we'll see you tomorrow, same time, same place, but not as late.
Stay black.